Chapter 201, Late Bloomer. Come on, hurry up. We'll miss it if we don't run. Yeah, it's a duel between Alicia and Ray. Everyone's already there. This is going to be really interesting. Doesn't Ray have feelings for Alicia? Then why is he the one challenging her to a duel in front of everyone? The three students of Class 1C spoke quickly among themselves while running through the corridor, their steps echoing as excitement pushed their pace. Just then, a sudden gust of wind surged past them from behind, making their hair whip around and their uniforms flutter. What the heck? Why is the wind blowing so fast all of a sudden? They almost stumbled from the unexpected force, barely managing to steady themselves as they stopped in their tracks to regain balance. That's when they noticed something strange. Wait, that wasn't just wind, was it? I did not feel like a normal wind. For real, was that actually a person who just passed us? They stared wide-eyed at the empty hallway ahead, stunned by what they had just witnessed. That speed. It was too ridiculous to belong to a first-year student. Was that some senior from the fourth year? It must have been an elite student from the fourth year. You know how absurdly strong those elites are, right? Rin said, still catching his breath. Yeah, that has to be it. Kai muttered in agreement, his eyes squinting at the far end of the hall. Wait, look, I think he's coming back. Finn, who was in the middle, suddenly pointed with his finger. Before they could even brace themselves, the figure reappeared like a shadow returning with the wind. The presence stopped right in front of them, and then calmly asked, "Where is the duel taking place?" Huh? Finn, Rin, and Kai all froze, unable to respond immediately. Their minds blanked the moment they looked at the person's face. He wasn't just fast. He was strikingly handsome. His appearance so unexpected it stunned them more than the speed itself. They only snapped back to reality when the boy repeated himself with the same question, this time with a slightly more serious tone. "It's in the Starlight Arena," Kai quickly replied, lifting his arm and pointing out the wide glass window beside them. From there, the massive Colosseum-like structure could be seen in the distance. Even though it was clearly visible, it was still a considerable distance away, making it appear smaller than it actually was. Although there were several short-distance teleportation circles installed across the academy to save time during rush hours, they often had waiting lines, especially during popular events like this duel. Damn it! The boy cursed under his breath, clearly frustrated. His gaze flicked toward the window, and without another word, he sprinted toward it. "Thank you." His voice faded away mid-sentence as he leaped straight out of the window, disappearing in an instant as he began falling through the air. Finn, Rin, and Kai rushed to the window frame with horror painted across their faces. They leaned out in a panic, expecting to see a body falling or lying somewhere below. But there was nothing, just grass swaying gently in the breeze, trees standing still, and the stone-paved pathway stretching ahead like nothing had happened. "Where did he go?" Rin asked, blinking in disbelief. "How would I know? He was right in front of us just a second ago," Finn replied, scanning the ground with wide eyes. "But he asked us where the duel was taking place. He must have gone to watch it. And considering how fast he moved, I'm guessing his trait is something related to speed, or maybe wind itself," Kai said, his tone thoughtful now. "But we forgot to tell him that the duel already started 5 minutes ago. We're the only ones who are running late," Rin said in a quieter voice, a note of guilt slipping in. "He didn't ask about the timing, though," Finn shrugged. "Yeah," Kai nodded, backing him up. "If you say so," Rin muttered, finally relaxing as the three of them resumed their run, while thinking who that person was. Curse it all. I am late, Ash thought, his eyes narrowing as he stood silently atop the tallest outer wall of the Colosseum stands. The wind tugged at his clothes, whispering past him in swift, sharp gusts. Yet, his gaze didn't waver, remaining fixed on the scene unfolding below. He had just teleported here, right after leaping out of the window. The duel had already begun, and judging from the breathing of Alicia, it had probably been going on for a few minutes now. There was a deathly silence across the arena, so intense that even the shifting of robes or the clatter of a dropped pin might have echoed through the air. Yet despite that, almost half of the audience had their devices raised, silently recording the battle that unfolded before them. Ash knew exactly what would happen next. These recordings would soon start circulating through the Academy's internal forums, shared in whispers and speculations. While it wouldn't affect anything in the grand scheme, he was more concerned about how Alicia would take it. From what he knew, she had never been comfortable with public attention, especially in situations like this. Then why the hell is she even fighting down there? I told her not to do anything impulsive like this. And that son of a bitch is actually fighting her. Is he completely out of his mind? Even though anger simmered beneath his thoughts, Ash remained surprisingly calm. His breathing was steady, his mind focused. Despite the flare of emotion, he wasn't overwhelmed by it. Instead, he was analyzing the situation with a sharp clarity, allowing the emotion to exist without letting it control him. From what he remembered about Alicia's character in the novel, Moon Mana was more of a late bloomer type. Or perhaps, it had some kind of specific condition tied to its awakening. He wasn't entirely sure. The novel hadn't gone into deep detail about it, and much of it had remained vague or only briefly mentioned. But what was certain was that in the story, Alicia only began to truly grasp the potential of Moon Mana after reaching the adept rank. It was at that point that she started to unlock the true nature of its abilities. Of course, there had been records and historical data from Moon Mana users who came before her. Some of those individuals had manifested traces of power even in the early stages of awakening. But the truth was, the moment when one could fully harness the essence of the moon varied from person to person. I have already told her multiple times that her powers will start to manifest more clearly and consistently once she steps into the next rank. Then why is she so eager to fight now of all times? What exactly is pushing her to do this? Sighing heavily, Ash shifted his focus to the fight. As expected, there was no surprise in what he saw. It was completely one-sided. Ray wasn't attacking at all, but was simply evading or casually blocking every strike that Alicia threw at him. His movements were smooth and controlled. I need to first find out the actual reason behind this duel. Only after that will I decide what to do. His eyes scanned the stands below. The crowd was large, but the moment his gaze landed on Grace and the other students of Class 1S, who were standing together near the bottom stands, he instantly teleported. You should just surrender, Ray said quietly, his voice calm as he stood just a few steps away from Alicia, who was breathing hard, her chest rising and falling as she held her blade in front of her with both hands, her stance trembling slightly. Can't win. That thought had settled in her heart long ago, ever since their very first clash. From the moment their swords collided, it had been painfully clear to her. This wasn't a battle she had any chance of winning. Every movement, every strike, every attempt to counter him only confirmed what her instincts already knew. Ray was on a completely different level. Still, even with that bitter truth gnawing at the back of her mind, she refused to back down. But I don't want to give up. He's not attacking me seriously. Maybe there's still a chance if I can catch him off guard. That fragile hope, barely a flicker, gave her enough strength to move again. She dashed forward, her blade dancing in her grip as she launched a relentless assault from all directions. One strike flowed into the next just like she had practiced. Her blade shimmered faintly, coated in silver moon mana. Yet no matter how hard she pushed, it barely scratched Ray's sword, which was covered in a strange, dense brownish aura that seemed to absorb the blows without faltering. Getting dangerously close to him, she suddenly tried to grab his sword with her bare hand and follow through with an attack of her own, hoping to catch him off guard. But Ray was even faster than her. Not only did he evade her hand with ease, he caught her wrist in a firm grip, disarming her instantly. Her blade clattered to the floor as he placed his sword gently, yet firmly, against the side of her neck. Just surrender, he said again, his tone sharper this time, no longer a suggestion but a clear demand. Yet even then, there was no arrogance in his voice. He was simply trying to end the fight without hurting her more than necessary. Gritting her teeth, she threw a reckless elbow at his ribs, trying to push him away. It was a dangerous move, one that no trained fighter should ever make in close combat. In a real battle, such a stunt would have gotten her killed without a second's hesitation. But this wasn't a life-or-death fight. Deep down, she knew Ray wasn't going to hurt her, so she was using it as an advantage. And as she has expected, he let her go. She jumped back, retreating, and took a deep breath as she tried to calm her racing thoughts. What do I do now? I don't want to lose, but the difference in our strength is too much. I can't believe how far ahead he is. How did he grow so powerful in just a few months? She charged again, letting her emotions guide her, but the outcome didn't change. No matter how fast she moved, no matter which direction she attacked from, it felt as though Ray could read her every move, as if he already knew the path her sword would take before she did. It was frustrating. I don't want to lose. I don't want to. He insulted Ash. Yes, I can't let him walk away after that, not without facing consequences. He was looking down on Ash. Her mind was spiraling, emotions slipping from her control. Her thoughts became a tangled mess, and that chaos bled into her movements. Her strikes grew more reckless, each swing more desperate than the last, heavier, burdened with emotion instead of precision. And then, in that moment of frenzied intent, the moon mana surrounding her blade suddenly shuddered. Chapter 202, Moon Essence Awakening. She is pathetically weak, Aurora thought to herself as she watched the ongoing fight from above. A slight frown tugged at the corner of her lips. Although she had expected Alicia to lose the battle, especially given the difference in their ranks, what truly disappointed her wasn't the outcome itself. It was the way the fight was unfolding. There was no resistance, no thrill, no clash worth holding one's breath for. It felt dull and lifeless, almost like watching a routine spar without any real stakes. I hoped to see something spectacular, something that would make this moment exciting, but this is just too boring to keep watching. She had genuinely been looking forward to seeing someone else who, like her, was blessed by a celestial phenomenon. She had imagined Alicia channeling some radiant and mysterious power drawn from the moon, showing a glimpse of brilliance that only those touched by the stars could wield. It would have been something beautiful to witness. But now, watching the fight, all those expectations quietly crumbled. Still, the reason Aurora had come wasn't just for this match. Duel was just an excuse. After all, she has already saw Alicia fight when the demons evaded, though she was hoping to see at least some growth. She in fact came for Ash. When the demons attacked the academy, it was him who faced the front lines of the battle. It was him who stood firm and carried the weight of the chaos. At the very least, he had proven himself to be more reliable than Ray, who was so often spoken of as if he were the strongest among the students. She wanted to meet him and get to know him at least. Just as she let out a quiet sigh and prepared to turn away from the fight, a voice suddenly rang through the air. It was clear, calm, and completely devoid of emotion. It didn't rise above the usual volume, and yet it cut through the surrounding chatter like a blade. Why are they fighting? Is this a part of some official test? Or is there another reason behind this battle? The words caught everyone off guard. The heads of nearly every student and instructor present turned at once toward the source of the voice. A shared wave of surprise rippled through the group. Their eyes widened not just because of the question, but because of who had spoken it. Ash was standing there. No one had seen him arrive. A moment ago, that spot had been completely empty. There had been no sound of footsteps, no shift in mana. It was as if he had simply appeared in the blink of an eye. Before the silence could stretch on too long or become uncomfortable, Instructor Leonard stepped forward. There was a glint of curiosity in his gaze, and a wide grin that said he had been waiting for something like this to happen. "Oh, Ash, you're here?" Leonard said with a wide grin stretching across his face, his eyes gleaming like someone about to witness something spectacular, something thrilling enough to forget the formalities of the moment. "Instructor Leonard, it's good to see you again," Ash replied with a calm and light voice, his tone carrying a faint warmth, though his eyes remained distant, not quite focused on anything in particular. Yes, yes, it's good to see you again too. Haha. Leonard chuckled heartily. He wasn't just being polite. After all, they'd sparred almost every day for over a month. That kind of physical connection, that mutual understanding forged through sweat and bruises, had erased most of the formal distance between them. Before Leonard could open his mouth to say anything more, Ash's voice cut in again, gentle but firm. Instructor, can you please tell me why they're fighting? Leonard opened his mouth, already mid-thought. Oh, them? I heard. But his words were suddenly interrupted by another voice, sharp and a little rushed. Wait! Instructor! Both Ash and Leonard turned toward the sound, only to find Grace walking toward them, her steps brisk, her face filled with urgency. Sorry for cutting in, Instructor, she said, her tone a little breathless but polite. But can I please explain it to him instead? Leonard gave a half-hearted wave of his hand and shrugged, as if it wasn't worth arguing over. Fine, whatever, he said, but his gaze didn't move from Ash even for a second. He was silently observing, watching the way Ash stood, the subtle movement of his shoulders, the shift of his weight. It made Ash feel strangely uncomfortable, as if something inside him was being evaluated. Feeling that gaze crawl across his skin, Ash shifted slightly, his body instinctively tensing. He turned his eyes to Grace and nodded. Tell me. Basically. Grace began to explain everything, the whole chain of events, every twist and turn. She spoke of how Ray had confessed his feelings to Alicia, how she had rejected him, how Alicia had openly admitted that she liked Ash, and how that had escalated into the current duel. She even mentioned, although cautiously, her guess that Alicia had stepped in because she thought Ray was going to challenge Ash instead. Ash stood silently, listening to every word. Not a single emotion passed across his face. When Grace finished speaking, he simply closed his eyes. A heavy silence settled around them like mist. Every student from Class 1S, along with several instructors and onlookers from other classes, kept their eyes locked on him. Even though no one said a word, it was clear from their faces. They were waiting to see what Ash would do, waiting for his reaction. After all, whether he liked it or not, this entire situation had his name written all over it. So, Ray was planning to challenge me to a duel. And because of that, Alicia stepped in to fight in my place. A sigh escaped his lips, but it didn't lighten the weight in his chest. He clenched his fists, but his blood, bones, and muscles were so dense with raw strength that not even a trace of whiteness showed in his knuckles. She must have thought she was dragging me into another fight, and that's why she's standing there now, fighting in my place. Damn it, she really hasn't changed at all, has she? His jaw clenched so tightly that a slight tremble passed through it, but he said nothing. But still, why do I feel like I should just go down there and beat the hell out of... Before that thought could form into something more dangerous, gasps and hushed whispers echoed through the crowd, snapping his attention back. His eyes flew open. He looked toward the arena, and what he saw made his eyes widen in disbelief. Really? Due to Alicia's emotions growing more chaotic and unstable, her attacks became wild and reckless. She swung her blade again and again without pausing, as if trying to drown out her thoughts through the sheer force of her strikes. With each swing, her momentum built, and her attacks grew faster, almost blurring as she pushed herself beyond her limits. She had unknowingly entered a flow state, a realm of instinct and power where everything else faded into the background. Just then, the moon mana that had been gathering around her blade shuddered violently. Her hands paused mid-swing, her breathing ragged. She was lucky because Ray, for some reason, had not taken the opening to strike. He simply stood there, looking at her with a warm and oddly gentle gaze, one that didn't suit a battle. I will gouge his eyes out. Why the hell is he looking at her like that? Bastard! Ash cursed inwardly as he observed the scene unfold before him. Still, he felt a strange relief. At least the opponent Alicia was facing wasn't someone cold enough to strike her at such a vulnerable moment. His gaze lingered on Alicia. Sigh. She is going to awaken those powers much earlier than she did in the novel. Looks like I ended up changing something else again. Suddenly, The moon mana erupted from her body, no longer just surrounding her blade, but enveloping her entire form. It flowed like a celestial stream, wrapping her in a cocoon of shimmering silver light that stood out beneath the heavy, dark clouds overhead. And then, after what felt like 5 long minutes, the moon essence began to retreat. The light dimmed, and the shimmering veil dispersed, revealing Alicia standing still, yet entirely different. The aura that now surrounded her body was terrifyingly calm but alarmingly lethal, like a predator waiting for the right moment to strike. What the? Ray's thoughts darkened as he stared at her with a furrowed brow. Just a moment ago, he had been treating her like a child playing with a sword. Now an unknown pressure weighed on him. For the first time, he felt a genuine sense of danger. What is this feeling? His body moved before his mind could catch up. He instinctively took a defensive stance, and the moment he did, gasps spread among the crowd watching from the stands. Of course, he can sense the danger. Ash narrowed his eyes. The truth was, he himself was sensing a level of threat from Alicia that even Ray probably couldn't fully comprehend. Because the first ability of Moon Essence was not a physical enhancement or flashy elemental burst, it was a soul-based attack. It didn't matter whether someone used aura shields or powerful defense techniques. As long as the attack connected, even if it hit your blade or armor, your soul would bear the damage. The only way to survive such an attack was to dodge it completely. And the reason Ray, despite having a higher rank, was instinctively backing off was because Alicia's soul was overwhelmingly strong. After all, it belonged to a transmigrated soul, one that carried more weight and power than anyone here could imagine. As for Ash, the reason he felt even more threatened was far more personal, because soul attacks were the one thing that could truly kill him. What an irony. Chapter 203, Alicia's Defeat. Feels so comfortable, Alicia thought as the sensation of overflowing energy surged through her body, filling every corner of her being. The exhaustion she had felt moments ago was gone, as if it had never existed. Her stamina and mana were now brimming to their peak, as if an invisible force had replenished her from within. The moon blessing was finally showing its true colors. She closed her eyes briefly, focusing on the moon mana flowing through her veins. But something felt different now. There was a strange energy mixed with the familiar silver essence, blending so perfectly that it felt as if her blessing had finally awakened to its complete form. Her lips curved into a faint smile as she tightened her grip on her blade and shifted into her attacking stance once again. I think I just awakened a part of my true power. Although this awakening had come earlier than what Ash had told her to expect, she did not dwell on it. Her mind was now singularly focused on understanding her ability and putting it to use. This power, soul attack ability? Wait, a soul attack? Her expression grew conflicted. On one side, she was exhilarated to possess such a devastating ability. But on the other, she hesitated. This was a duel, not a battle to the death. What if she harmed Ray's soul beyond repair? The thought sent a ripple of unease through her. Biting her lips slightly, she hesitated for a moment, her thoughts swirling. Should I really use this? No, I have to. If I do not push myself now, if I cannot fight with all I have, then what is the point of standing here? I will only aim to land 1 or 2 hits, just enough to create openings for my attacks. Yes, that should be fine. Her inner conflict ended there. A surge of determination lit her eyes as she whispered under her breath, "Let's do it!" With that thought, she lunged forward, the silver moon mana around her blade flaring brightly, its glow carrying a sharp, almost predatory edge. There was no discomfort or hesitation in her movements. Using this power felt natural to her, as effortless as breathing itself. Ray's calm expression finally wavered. His eyes narrowed as he sensed the danger ahead. Boy, listen carefully. That is not just mana. It's a soul attack. Hearing Etheris' voice echo inside his mind, Ray's steps faltered for a heartbeat, his gaze tightening with seriousness. A soul attack? So that is what this sharp, suffocating feeling is. After warning him, Etheris fell silent, deciding not to interfere further. He wanted Rey to learn through the pain of experience. Still, it had at least hinted at what kind of attack was coming. Alicia's blade, gleaming with moonlight, collided with Rey's weapon. The clash should have been nothing extraordinary, but the instant their weapons touched, a sharp cry escaped Rey's lips. His body recoiled, his face twisting in pain as though something invisible had stabbed through his very soul. He staggered back, clutching his sword tighter. A wave of gasps rippled through the arena stands, and the silence that followed was heavy enough to feel like the air itself had thickened. "What the hell was that?" a boy muttered, his voice breaking the stillness, his tone trembling with disbelief. Alicia was able to make Rey feel pain. "This is big news," another said, eyes wide and unblinking, as though struggling to process the sight before them. "I think she awakened some sort of new power," someone else added, their voice hushed yet filled with awe. "Of course she did. That whole 5 minutes Rey did not attack her. It was to give her time. That's what is called chivalrous," a girl said, her tone laced with both admiration and skepticism. "Are you sure he was not just mad in love?" another girl quipped, raising her brows with a smirk, drawing a mix of laughter and nervous glances from those nearby. Alicia, however, did not relent. This time, she swung again without using the soul attack, her movements fluid and sharp, each strike flowing into the next as if she were dancing with the blade. Rey, who just a moment ago had been confidently deflecting her strikes, now flinched away. He refused to let their weapons clash again, stepping back hurriedly. What is this power?" Rey growled under his breath, his grip tightening around his blade. Alicia's voice was low, but every word carried weight. "I will not lose to you, not when you insulted Ash." Her blood-red eyes felt like they glowed. "If I cannot stand for him now, then what right do I have to say I care for him?" Rey's expression darkened. "You're fighting for him? To protect him?" "I don't need to prove myself to you," Alicia replied, her tone calm yet cutting. "But I will show you that looking down on him is your greatest mistake." Rey gritted his teeth. "Ash again. Always Ash. Even now, I am not the one she sees." Meanwhile, in the stands, Ash's lips curled into the faintest smile. "That's right." Alicia, just like that, hit him one more time. There was a strange satisfaction in watching this unfold, a fleeting sense of refreshment. But that emotion soon vanished, replaced by his usual calm. But still, this is not enough to defeat him. Ash's thoughts remained calm and clear as he observed the scene unfolding below. He already knew the difference between their strength, and as if to confirm his thoughts, the very next exchange proved him right. Before Alicia could gather herself for another strike, Rey's figure blurred and vanished from sight. The sound of a single step echoed faintly, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared behind her, his presence pressing down like a shadow. She froze for the briefest moment when she felt the blunt edge of his academy sword resting at her neck. "Just give up," Rey said, his tone calm but carrying the weight of finality. Alicia's grip tightened on her blade, her breath coming out uneven. Her mind screamed at her to stop, but her heart burned with defiance. "Can't give up, not yet." Before his words could even finish, she twisted her body sharply, ignoring the blunt weapon on her neck. Her blade gleamed as it swung toward him with desperate force, but Rey's figure shifted again. In the blink of an eye, he was behind her once more, faster than her eyes could follow. This time, his voice was colder, though still controlled. "Why are you pushing yourself this far? Do you want to end up hurt? Shut up. I am not done yet," she shouted through ragged breaths, her voice trembling but filled with determination. Rey's brows furrowed slightly as he sighed. So stubborn. Before she could swing again, his hand moved with blinding speed, landing a sharp strike at the back of her neck. It was precise and controlled, intended to end the duel without causing injury, but strong enough to force her consciousness to fade. Her blade slipped from her fingers as her vision blurred. "No, cannot lose like this." Rey exhaled softly, a sigh that carried no triumph, only quiet resignation. He stepped forward, reaching out to catch her falling body, but then his entire body stiffened, because before he could even reach her, someone else was already there, just a few steps away, standing tall and calm, holding Alicia's unconscious form in his arms, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Ash was standing there, his gaze fixed firmly on Ray. Ray's eyes narrowed. When did he... Wait, who is that handsome? A girl in the stands blurted out, leaning forward with wide eyes. Senior, maybe? Another guessed, though their uncertain tone betrayed their doubt. That's Ash Byrne, you idiots. What? Are you saying he is Ash? That... Ash? Of course, Dumbo, came the exasperated reply. Wait, then how did he appear there so suddenly? And how is he looking like that? How would I know, genius? Probably some artifact or skill. Maybe. But still. The crowd buzzed with disbelief. The big screen above the arena replayed the scene of someone appearing out of nowhere to catch Alicia mid-fall, and the stands erupted into murmurs and whispers. The once silent arena now sounded like a hive of startled bees. And then, cutting through all that noise, Ash's voice echoed around the arena. It carried through the mic zone into the dual uniforms that Ray and Alicia were wearing, a feature designed for both commentary and safety measures. Of course, nothing could have predicted or blocked a soul attack like Alicia's earlier. That was something even the Academy's systems hadn't accounted for. I heard you wanted to duel me? The moment his words resounded across the arena, silence fell once again. It was heavy, almost suffocating, as if no one dared breathe. Only the instructors murmured among themselves, their voices low, while Leonard stood off to the side, grinning like a man who had just been promised a spectacle. Yes, fight. Show me a good fight. I have high expectations from both of you now. The way Ash carried himself, Leonard could feel it deep in his bones. Ash was strong, so much stronger than before. He couldn't even begin to estimate the extent of Ash's growth, but it made his blood stir in anticipation. Whatever fortunate encounters you have had, I don't know, but show me something worth the wait. After all this time, I want to see a blood-boiling fight. Yeah, I wanted to, Ray replied, his tone cold and cutting. I see. Fine. Let's duel then, Ash said, his voice calm yet firm. He tilted his head slightly, as if sizing Ray up, and then silently stepped away with Alicia still in his arms, carrying her with effortless grace in a princess carry. Unnoticed by anyone, a faint glow of life mana shimmered around his hand as he infused energy into her neck, easing the shock from Ray's earlier strike. He quickly entrusted her to the Academy Infirmary's doctor, confirming she had only fainted, and then turned back to the arena. In just a few minutes, Ash was standing there again, facing Ray with quiet determination. Ray, on the other hand, was finishing a potion, his expression unreadable. Soul-healing potion? Ash wondered but dismissed the thought. It wasn't strange. After all, his system has all kinds of items that could mend even the deepest wounds. Instructor Leonard stepped into the arena with a smile that looked far too pleased for the tense moment at hand. Are you sure you both want to fight? Yes. The two of them replied at the same time, their voices overlapping but equally firm. Fine. I'll step out and watch from outside the barrier since this fight might get out of hand, Leonard said, his tone betraying a flicker of excitement. Do you need any weapon, Ash? I am a mage, instructor, Ash replied softly. Oh, right. I almost forgot you're a mage. Ha ha ha. All right. Leonard's grin widened. Then let's start. Chapter 204. Ash versus Ray 1. I will not win in a sword fight, Ash thought with quiet certainty, his gaze fixed on Ray. No one knew Ray's abilities better than him, and because of that, he was fully aware there was no chance of defeating him with swords alone, at least, not yet. Due to his trait and class, he can easily see through any sword art and exploit the weak points. Even though I have somehow managed to create a rough, clumsy sword art of my own, I will lose miserably if I rely on swordsmanship alone. Because of this, he decided to maintain the act of pretending to be a mage. But that did not mean he was incapable of fighting up close. No, he will fight without any restrictions on himself, just he does not want to give Ray a chance to exploit his weakness right now. He might read my sword, but let's see how well he can handle my fists. Instructor Leonard's voice cut through the tense silence. Start. He stepped outside the arena, his eyes glimmering with a sharp interest as if expecting something fierce to unfold. Ash and Ray stood still, their gazes locked, both wearing the black combat uniforms of the academy. The suits clung to their forms, revealing the defined muscles and honed physiques they had built through relentless training. Then a flash of lightning tore across the dark sky above, as if signaling the start of their clash. Ray moved first, his body blurred, vanishing and reappearing right in front of Ash using flicker step. Ash, prepared for such a sudden rush, shifted his stance with sharp precision. He stepped back and twisted, sending a spinning back kick toward Ray's stomach, the strike cutting through the air with a violent hiss. Ray twisted his body with an almost unnatural precision, his movements fluid yet sharp as he narrowly avoided the incoming strike. Without wasting even a fraction of a second, his sword shifted seamlessly, flashing toward Ash's extended leg with the intent to cut off his momentum and exploit the opening. But Ash's body pulsed with a faint crimson glow for a brief second. With a smooth, almost unnatural twist of his hips, he shifted his weight onto his hands, flipping upside down on the ground. He swept his other leg in an arc, a second strike aiming directly at Ray's head. What kind of movement is this? Ray's eyes widened, but his instincts pushed him to duck just in time. The red glow surrounding Ash's body faded quickly after that single movement. Ash had tapped into the second form of Dark Ash martial arts, which drew its strength from raw emotions, particularly rage. For a moment, memories related to fury and pain surged through his mind, feeding power into his muscles and reflexes. But as soon as he completed the motion, he cast those memories aside, regaining control. This second form excelled at unnatural body control, breaking conventional fighting rhythms. Ash could not maintain it for long, but when used in short bursts it was enough to throw his opponents off balance. Ray, however, was only getting started. Even as he ducked, his blade flowed like water, aiming for Ash's hands that were supporting him on the ground. But Ash anticipated the attack. With explosive force, he propelled his body upward, soaring into the air like a coiled spring released. With his stats surpassing 400 and his perfect foundation, his body shot almost 12 to 15 feet high into the air. Ray looked up, his eyes narrowing. He dodged my attack, even though I wasn't using my full strength, but that won't save him now. Frustration edged into his thoughts. He had held back against Alicia, but this was different. With Ash, there was no need for restraint. Let's see you dodge this. His blade glow shifted from brownish to a faint greenish hue as wind aura wrapped around it, sharp and cutting. With quick movements, he unleashed a flurry of slashes, sending multiple wind blades flying toward Ash, each one cutting through the air with deadly precision. So he has already mastered transforming his aura. Ash's eyes narrowed slightly. Fighters who possessed multiple elemental affinities could shape their aura into different elemental forms, but it was a skill that only a few achieved at this stage. Ray's growth was advancing faster than expected. I don't know how much my presence has changed his progress or how strong he is now. I must not get careless. After all, with his system shop, there's no telling what tricks or weapons he could bring out at any moment. Even as these thoughts ran through his mind, Ash's focus did not waver. With Omni Thought, every detail was processed clearly and quickly. Still upside down in the air, watching the deadly wind blades approach, he whispered softly, "Snake Lightning." After fusing the rune of concealment with his soul tree, Ash had initially expected a symbol to appear on his body like with the life and knowledge runes, but nothing did. Only later did he understand the true nature of this rune. The rune completely hid every trace of spell casting. No runic symbols, no mana strings, nothing. To an outside observer, it appeared as though he was instant casting. This was something he could control at will, allowing him to either hide or reveal the casting process whenever he wished. However, he preferred to keep it hidden, as he did not want anyone to discover that he was using runic magic. The rune of concealment had completely solved one of his biggest headaches. With this, he no longer had to go out of his way to mask his magic. If anyone questioned it, he could simply claim that he possessed exceptionally high mastery over the spell or that he had an instant casting trait. After all, once a mage trains in magic circle techniques and reaches the peak of mastery, instant casting becomes possible, though such a realm is one that only a rare few ever manage to achieve. A crackle of lightning suddenly burst around his body, twisting and coiling like a living serpent. It tore through the air and met the incoming wind blades head-on. Boom! 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 Explosions roared one after another, filling the arena with smoke and bursts of blinding light. It looked as though a violent storm had descended right into the Colosseum, the clashing elements resembling fireworks on the battlefield. Although it felt like time had slowed, but all this chaos unfolded within the span of just a few seconds. When the light and noise finally calmed, Ash was no longer where he had been. Using the chaos of the explosions as a perfect cover, he had already teleported behind Ray, his body twisting like a striking serpent as he sent a powerful fist toward Ray's head. But his fist passed straight through Ray's figure, which shimmered like a mirage before vanishing completely. Illusion steps? He already mastered this technique? That means he has reached expert rank. Ash's mind sharpened as realization struck. Illusion steps was not something easily learned. It was a technique the God-Slayer sword personally taught Ray after regaining more of its memories. For Ray to have already reached this stage meant his growth was beyond what Ash had imagined. Ash had believed he was ahead of Ray, but now it was clear that Ray, too, was moving forward with relentless determination. The next instant, Ash felt a sudden shift in the air behind him. His instincts screamed danger, but his current positioning was terrible. There was no time to block or evade in the conventional way. But even then, there is always another way. Lightning bloom. Lightning exploded around Ash's body like a blossoming flower of raw energy, erupting in a violent shockwave that engulfed the arena, forcing both Ray and everything nearby to scatter backward. What trickery is this? Ray's thoughts darkened as confusion spread across his face. The unpredictability of Ash's fighting style was throwing him off completely, and what shocked him even more was what he had just witnessed.
Instant casting?
Even Instructor Elva cannot do that. Damn it, how is he this strong? I'm already at expert rank. For heaven's sake. But he had no time to dwell on the thought. The swirling storm of lightning surged toward him like a living beast, its tendrils lashing unpredictably. Without Etheirys in his hands, countering it head-on was not easy. The lightning was spreading in every direction, leaving no gaps to escape or teleport. Clicking his tongue in frustration, Ray shifted his aura from wind to space. Void Severance. With a sharp, cutting strike, the space around his sword trembled, splitting apart the mass of lightning and creating a narrow path. But it was not enough. The storm was alive and unpredictable, its bolts twisting like wild serpents, striking him across his body. The protective layer of his dueling clothes burned and scorched in several places as the energy tore past him. With gritted teeth, Ray charged forward, pushing through the storm while enduring the pain. When he finally emerged, his breathing was heavier, and his clothes were singed, but his expression remained cold and steady. There were no visible wounds, but the internal damage from Ash's lightning was clear. The moment he stepped out of the storm, he found himself surrounded by a dozen or more floating lightning spheres, each sparking ominously as if waiting for Ash's command. The air was alive with electric tension, the faint hum of power echoing through the arena. Ray's expression hardened, all traces of his earlier carelessness vanishing. His violet aura burst forth like a tidal wave, wrapping around him with overwhelming intensity. However, the Academy-issued sword in his hand, already weakened by his previous overcharged strike, crumbled into fragments under the sheer pressure of his power. With no weapon left, Ray exhaled deeply and focused. His aura surged once more, condensing around his hands, forming a glowing violet blade of pure energy that extended outward like a weapon forged from his will. This feat was not something ordinary students could perform. Manifesting a weapon purely from aura required not just strength but a mastery over swordsmanship that even many trained knights took years to achieve. But Rei was far from ordinary. His body and blade moved as one, flowing like water yet striking with the precision of a storm. A breathtaking sword dance unfolded before the entire arena. His violet blade cut through the air with lethal grace, slashing and spinning, weaving arcs of light as he destroyed the lightning spheres one after another. Each strike was seamless, merging offense and defense into a single rhythm, his movements faster and sharper than before. And then, as if sensing the threat, the remaining lightning balls detonated all at once. Blinding flashes erupted, thunderous explosions rattling the arena floor. Yet this time Rei stood untouched. He had already eliminated most of the orbs within his reach, and his violet aura shielded him from the few erratic strikes that remained. The arena floor sizzled, streaked with dancing lightning that writhed like serpents seeking prey. But Rei did not wait. Without hesitation, he dashed forward, his aura surging with renewed determination. The clash between him and Ash resumed, fiercer than before. Explosions shook the arena every time their attacks met, their movements blurring as if the two of them were shadows darting through storms of light. At times, Ash vanished and reappeared unpredictably, teleporting through the smoke and sparks of his own spells, while other moments saw the two colliding head-on, each impact sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The audience could only watch with wide eyes and open mouths. Instructors and students alike were frozen in place, while Vice Principal Elva and Principal Nicole exchanged unreadable glances, their eyes fixed on the battle. Even the Whisperer, who had been observing quietly from the start, leaned forward with interest. Among the students, Ethan, Melissa, Aurora, Irvin, and countless others had the same stunned expression, unable to look away. Most of them were thinking the same thing. What the hell is this power? The energy released by Ash and Rei was unlike anything they had seen from students. No, this wasn't the level of students anymore. This was the power of monsters in human form, clashing with a force far beyond what their age or training should allow. Some among the crowd whispered another thought. What kind of freak is Ash, to cast spells instantly while trading blows with someone like Rei? But the thought that echoed most among them all was a shared realization. The fight is only beginning. What will these two monsters show us next? Chapter 205. Ash vs. Rei 2. Boom! Ash's body skidded across the arena floor, his boots scraping against the cracked tiles as debris rolled and shattered around him. He planted his heel firmly to halt his momentum, the impact leaving faint cracks beneath his feet. Dust hung in the air, swirling like mist after a storm. Before he could even regain his footing, Rei had already closed the distance, his figure cutting through the smoke like a predator closing in on its prey. There was no aura covering his body this time. Rei was careful with his energy, conserving it for crucial moments when he needed to counter Ash's unpredictable spells. For now, he relied entirely on his raw speed and close combat mastery. Rei's fist shot forward in a straight line aimed at Ash's chest. It was sharp and precise, fast enough to make the air whistle. But just as the attack was about to land, Ash's figure blurred and vanished. He reappeared behind Rei in a flash of light, his teleportation so smooth and fluid that it almost looked like he had simply stepped through space. Ash was no longer holding back. He wasn't hiding his abilities anymore. Too many people had already seen glimpses of what he could do, and fighting at full strength was the only choice. He twisted his body and launched a fierce punch toward Rei's ribs. But once again, the attack passed straight through him as though hitting a mirage. Damn it, this is getting really annoying. Ash clicked his tongue in frustration. He knew exactly how to counter Illusion Step. If he could coat his hands with compressed space mana, the distortion around Rei's body would collapse instantly. Illusion Step was strong, but it was not invincible. But I cannot reveal that. If I suddenly use space mana directly on my hands after claiming I am a mage, it will only raise questions. Ash's eyes narrowed as a different idea formed in his mind. Still, it's not like there is no other way. Thinking that, he muttered softly. Space needles. The air trembled for an instant as countless thin, needle-like constructs of compressed space mana shot out in a blink. They were nearly invisible to the naked eye and moved silently, cutting through the space around Ray. The moment they touched his fading figure, a sharp grunt escaped his throat, and the illusion shattered. His real body was forced back into view. Ash did not waste a second. His foot slammed against the ground as he dashed forward with explosive force. His body moved like a coiled spring, releasing all its tension. With a swift turn of his hips, his legs swept in a clean roundhouse kick that struck Ray's ribs with a heavy thud, the impact reverberating through the arena. Ray's breath caught in his throat, his body forced to the side from the blow. Before he could even recover, Ash closed the distance again and launched a punch aimed at his face. The strike connected with devastating precision, the sound of the impact echoing like a crack of thunder. A few of Ray's teeth spun into the air, scattering onto the ground with a faint clatter. Ray's body was sent tumbling backwards, rolling across the arena floor as dust and shards of stone scattered with every impact. When he finally slid to a stop, his body was sprawled across the ground like dead weight, unmoving for a moment. Gasps echoed from the stands, a wave of shock rippling through the silent crowd. The clash they had just witnessed left their minds frozen, their mouths open in disbelief. The arena went quiet, an almost eerie silence filling the air. Then, as if the world itself was holding its breath, raindrops began to fall. The sound of rain striking the arena floor spread through the silence like a soft drumbeat, every drop echoing in the hearts of the onlookers. No one dared to move, let alone speak. It felt as though even breathing too loudly would disturb the tension gripping the entire Colosseum. Come on, stand up, Ray. I know it's not over yet. Ash thought silently, his sharp eyes fixed on the still figure lying ahead. He stepped forward, the faint reflection of lightning above flashing in his calm yet determined gaze. Ray, however, was drowning in his own thoughts. How is he this strong? I am an expert rank. How can he fight me as if my stats and perfect foundation mean nothing? Don't tell me Ash also has one. But how? Frustration twisted his thoughts, each question clawing deeper at his pride. The most suspicious thought that surfaced was about Ash being the mysterious unknown. But he forced it away. No, that can't be. Unknown didn't have the ability to instant cast like this. Does that mean Alicia was right? Ash was way stronger than me. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Oh. Even Etheris remained quiet, but he was evaluating Ray's countless mistakes. It was clear to him now. Ray had been too arrogant, thinking he could fight Ash without using his aura blade. That one choice had already cost him dearly. If only you had used the blade earlier, Etheris thought. Yes, it would have drained your energy faster, but it would have pressured Ash. Pressure forces mistakes, and mistakes win fights. Stop letting your pride blind you, Ray. Focus. You can ask all the questions you want once you defeat him. But for that, you must stand. Get up now. Hearing Etheris's voice echoing in his mind, Ray clenched his teeth so hard his jaw ached. He forced himself to remember Alicia's face, the expression she wore, the way she had looked at Ash. Something inside him burned hotter. Anger surged through his veins like fire, pushing away hesitation. Opening his system shop, Ray's gaze hardened. Without hesitation, he purchased a pill and few other things. 50,000 points of the pill disappeared from his total in an instant. It was a steep price, but he had enough saved up. Without even thinking twice, he placed the golden pill on his tongue and swallowed it. Pill name: Limit-Breaking Pill. Pill rank: Master. Description: this pill forcefully ignites the user's potential, pushing their body beyond their natural limit. It also smoothens the process of rank advancement. The boost in power depends on both the user's own rank and the quality of the pill. As soon as the pill melted on Ray's tongue, a surge of power rippled through his body. His veins burned with energy, and waves of mana coursed through every inch of him, making his body glow faintly with a radiant light. It felt as if his very blood was turning into liquid fire, purging weakness from within. Sigh. Is he ranking up now? This is just like those tropes where the hero powers up mid-battle while the villain watches. No, wait. Does that make me the villain? No, I'm not. Ash shook his head, chasing away those ridiculous thoughts, though the irritation lingered. Should I attack him now, or should I wait? If Ash were anywhere else, he would not have hesitated for even a moment. He would have struck instantly, cutting off the transformation before it began. But this was an official academy duel, and he could not simply break the rules in front of everyone. Moreover, Ray had given Alicia the time to awaken her own power earlier, and that small gesture of fairness now weighed on Ash's mind. I guess I can repay that little favor, but if I get another chance, I will not hesitate. I will not miss the opportunity then. Meanwhile, mana roared around Ray's body like a rising tide. His wounds sealed themselves as if they were never there. His reserves, which had been dwindling, now brimmed with energy, flooding his core with a frightening intensity. His muscles tightened and strengthened, while every impurity in his mana channels was forced out, leaving his mana core sharper and more refined than before. Minutes passed, and the transformation reached its end. The Ray standing before Ash was the same young man, but his aura had completely changed. It was heavy, oppressive, the kind of presence that made even the spectators unconsciously hold their breath. Ash, however, felt none of that pressure. Instead, his lips curved into a grin. Yes, grow stronger. The stronger you become, the better it will feel when I beat you down. He did not intend to give Ray any more chances. With a wave of his hand, countless space needles shot forward, tearing through the air with lethal precision. But Ray moved even before the needles could reach him. He teleported, his body flickering like a shadow, and in the next instant he was right in front of Ash. His aura flared, condensing around his hands as he conjured a blade of pure violet energy. Then, with no pause, he launched into a relentless barrage. Sword arts flowed from Ray like an unstoppable tide. Some strikes were fast and sharp, others were heavy and crushing, and a few were flexible and adaptive, bending in ways that seemed impossible. Ash found himself struggling to counter. Each strike pushed him closer to the edge, and though he dodged the impossible angles by relying on the second form of his martial arts, the pressure was mounting. His movements became sharper, yet Ray's attacks only grew more aggressive, as if feeding on the momentum of each exchange. Finally, Ash teleported away to gain distance, appearing high above Ray. But this time, he wrapped himself in absolute concealment, erasing his presence completely. In front of his outstretched hand crackled a dense, sparking orb of lightning, arcs of blue-white energy twisting like serpents around his fingers. Space Needle. Spark Ball. The Space Needles shot out first, moving almost instantly towards Ray's head. But before they could land, a shimmering protective barrier erupted around Ray's body, scattering the needles harmlessly. Ash's eyes widened, his instincts screaming, "It's a trap!" Before he could teleport away, a hand coated in blunt aura pierced through the veil of smoke and struck him squarely in the chest, right over his heart. Koog! The air left his lungs in a violent rush. In the next instant, Ray grabbed him by the collar, using his momentum to slam Ash's body into the ground with a thunderous impact that shook the arena. Stone cracked and dust shot up like a wave. "Idiot! Did you really think I would fall for the same trick twice?" Ray's cold voice cut through the noise of the arena like a blade. His aura still burned around him, thick and suffocating. Ash, lying on the cracked floor, coughed lightly, tasting iron in his mouth, but his eyes stayed sharp and calm. Ray smirked as he thought to himself, "I did well purchasing this skill. It devoured my system points like a beast, but the result, it is worth every point." Asterisk. Chapter 206. Ash vs. Ray 3. Skill name, Indomitable Mantle. Skill rank, Saint. Description: a passive defensive skill that absorbs the force of all incoming attacks. The absorbed force can be stored, redirected, or converted into healing. If the stored energy crosses its limit, the skill will collapse and cannot be used for the rest of the day. Abilities. Force absorption. All physical and magical impact is absorbed into the body instead of causing direct harm. Energy discharge. The stored force can be unleashed as a devastating counterattack. Healing surge. Part of the absorbed energy is automatically converted to heal injuries, restore stamina and lesser the fatigue. Although it consumed 400k points along with the other 50k points, I used to buy the limit-breaking pill to break through into master rank and push my stats beyond the 400 mark. I am now left with only around 80k points. But it was worth it, Ray thought, looking at Ash pinned beneath him. By catching Ash off guard, he had managed to suppress him for now. But Ray knew this fight would only become easier from this point forward. However, Ash, who had looked injured just a moment ago, suddenly seemed fine. His expression turned cold, his gaze sharp, and he muttered softly, "Lightning bloom." In an instant, lightning burst out of him, blooming like a destructive flower unfurling into chaos. But this time Ray didn't bother dodging. When the blinding flashes and crackling thunder faded, Ash was still down, while Ray stood unaffected. A grin spread across Ray's face as he seized the opportunity. Without hesitation, he began raining down heavy punches on Ash's guard and face. Ash raised his arms to block, but the continuous blows felt like a torrential downpour. Smack! Smack! Don't tell me? Ash thought, confusion creeping into his mind as he blocked the rapid punches. His suspicion was becoming reality. But how did he gather that many points? Ash recognized this skill instantly. It was one of Ray's strongest abilities, something he obtained much later in the original timeline after becoming legendary rank. The skill required a massive number of system points, far beyond what Ray should possess right now. This made no sense and it frustrated Ash. The punches continued to land, sometimes slipping past his guard and striking his face, but the pain was tolerable. Ash had endured far worse before. To him, this pain was nothing more than a faint sting, like being pricked by a thorn. Pain was never the problem here. The real issue was the skill Ray was using. Suddenly, Ash moved with sharp precision. He dropped his guard, catching one of Ray's fists in midair with unrelenting strength. Yet Ray's expression didn't even flinch. There was no pain in his eyes, not even the slightest reaction. I knew it, this is that broken skill. Ash remembered the outrage of readers from the original novel when this skill was introduced. It was practically unbeatable, absorbing every ounce of force from attacks and converting it into stored energy, while nullifying the pain entirely. It was an absurdly overpowered ability. Ray grinned, throwing another punch with his free hand, but Ash caught that too. Now both of Ray's wrists were firmly held. Their physical strength was evenly matched, both boasting perfect foundations and 400-plus stats. But this skill tilted the balance heavily in Ray's favor. I need to create distance first, Ash thought, his mind racing. As Ray leaned forward to deliver a headbutt, now that both his hands were trapped, Ash suddenly made his move. In the blink of an eye, he teleported, dragging Ray along with him. In the next moment, they appeared high above the arena, the wind howling sharply around them as Ash released Ray's hands, letting gravity take hold of them both. Their positions shifted instantly. Ash was now above while Ray was below, falling fast. Yet there was still a calm, unshaken look on Ray's face. He did not flinch, because he knew that no matter how hard he landed, he was not going to get hurt. And it is damn true. Unfair as it may sound, Ray's entire existence was unfair. But then again, what could one expect from someone who was favored by both the system and fate? Still, that did not mean there was no way to counter him. In fact, there was a way, and the answer was hidden within the skill itself. Ash just needed to strike him with an attack powerful enough to exceed the limit of energy the skill could store. Easier said than done. But it was not easy. There were many factors to consider. Firstly, Ray could release the stored energy at any moment, using it to counterattack and disrupt Ash's momentum. Secondly, that skill was able to endure even a saint's full-powered attack once before it reached its breaking point. And producing an attack on that level was nothing short of impossible for Ash at the moment. Twisting his body midair, Ash delivered a powerful spinning kick. Ray crossed his arms and blocked it, absorbing the strike with ease, but the sheer momentum still sent him crashing down like a falling boulder. The skill could stop the damage, but it could not negate the force of impact. Sigh. Now that I think about it, I can't even imagine how strong Ray truly was in the novel. The thought slipped into Ash's mind in the middle of the fight. He had always known Ray's strength from the story, but knowing and experiencing it firsthand were two very different things. Just counting his runes alone was frightening enough, but adding his class, skills, and overpowered traits made Ray feel like a walking disaster. And if even he couldn't fight the angels head-on, then just how strong were those angels? A shiver ran down Ash's spine at the mere thought of them. For a moment, the image of divine beings with wings of destruction flashed in his mind, but he immediately forced himself to dismiss it. Shaking off the dark thoughts, Ash began his descent toward the ground. He didn't teleport as he fell, using that brief moments to think, reposition, and plan his next move. But before he could, slashes filled with space aura came roaring from the dust on the ground, cutting the air like invisible blades. Ray was already back on his feet, his figure a blur as he swung his aura blades with wild precision. Ash then teleported behind him, forcing Ray to spin in response, and the deadly game of cat and mouse began. Ash dodged every strike with sharp, calculated movements, his body glowing crimson at times, silver at others, each color pushing his speed and flexibility beyond normal limits. Whenever he found himself cornered, he vanished, reappearing in unpredictable places, using his teleportation like a phantom stalking its prey. Ray, however, was relentless. His aura blades flowed like an unstoppable river, each slash blending into the next without pause. He was fast, adaptive, and precise, his strikes tearing the air apart as if it were paper. The arena floor cracked and trembled under the force of their movements, dust and sparks filling the air as their fight escalated. The game of slash and dodge continued, every second stretching like an eternity as the audience watched in stunned silence. I can't continue like this. My attacks won't work on him, so there is no point in wasting my energy and giving him power. Ash ducked under another slash, deflecting a sudden kick aimed at his forehead with the edge of his arm. Ray's movements were no longer bound by convention. They were sharp, unpredictable, and vicious, like a beast cornering its prey. I will have to immobilize him. If he cannot move, then even if I attack, he won't be able to release that charged power. Bam! But damn. Ash gritted his teeth, blocking another violent strike, his arms trembling faintly under the force. The way things are going, this is going to be hard. At this point, their fight no longer looked like a duel. It was more like a deadly dance, every step, kick, and strike flowing into the next. They moved across the arena like blurs of black, neither of them staying in one place for more than a second. Since Ash was avoiding spells that would directly strike Ray and feed his absurd skill, the battle had shifted entirely to brutal close combat. And yet, despite relying purely on physical combat, the power Ash displayed was nothing short of mind-blowing to the audience. To them, he was supposed to be a mage, but he was fighting nothing like a mage. Although trapping Ray would not be easy, it was not impossible either. Sliding back a few steps to create distance, Ash clenched his fist, forming a closing hand gesture. It was not necessary, but, yeah, a man should fight in a cool way. He muttered, "Bind." Instantly, chains of lightning burst out of thin air, coiling around Ray with crackling force. Mana poured from Ash's body in an unending stream, the glowing chains wrapping tighter and tighter, yet every few seconds some would snap and shatter against the violent aura cloaking Ray. For every broken chain, two more appeared to take its place, tightening the restraint. I need to hurry. The strain was immense. Ash could feel his mana draining at a terrifying pace, but the same was true for Ray. Aura consumption was no less demanding than lightning chains, and holding this kind of defensive state while being restrained would cost him heavily. With Ray's movements limited, Ash shifted his stance. Against an immobile opponent, the divine arts of Dark Ash were far more destructive than anything else he knew. First form, despair. His fists blurred. Closing in, Ash's mind sank into a storm of despair-filled memories, and his fists moved with the ferocity of a cornered beast. Jab, straight, underhand, overhook, hook. Punches rained from every angle, slamming into Ray's chest, face, and stomach without a pause. The air behind Ray cracked like distant thunder with every blow, each strike generating shockwaves strong enough to shake the arena floor. The barrage continued relentlessly for minutes. But even after 5 full minutes, Ray's face remained untouched, his skill absorbing everything like a void. Ray did not retaliate. He just stood there, staring coldly, as if mocking Ash for charging his skill with every hit. Meanwhile, Ash was seething. God damn it, how much more can that thing take? The despair in his heart deepened. His mind, already clouded by the memories fueling his form, snapped. I don't care anymore. Let them know. What can they even do? His left fist flared with violet space mana, raw and unrefined, while his right hand crackled with violent lightning. The dual force of space and storm collided in his hands, his fists carrying twice the force of his earlier strikes. Still, even that wasn't enough. From above and behind, lightning orbs exploded, striking Ray like divine hammers. The arena shook with each blast. 5 seconds later, Ash felt the burn of exhaustion. One of his mana cores was already fully spent. But still, Ray's skill showed no sign of reaching its limit. However, Ray's expression told a different story. His eyes were wide now, stunned, as if he was finally seeing the full weight of Ash's power. The same was true for everyone watching. Their mouths were open, their faces pale, and their breaths stuck in their throats. Only the principal and the Whisperer remained calm, their sharp gazes fixed on the battlefield. Chapter 207. Ash vs. Ray 4. Hey, does that make any sense? How would I even know? Maybe I am dreaming. No, idiots. I feel like we are under the illusion of another demon. The audience was muttering nonsense, their minds scattered and unable to grasp what they were witnessing. They had no choice. After all, the scene unfolding in front of them was far too shocking to comprehend. Questions were rising like a tide, and they were not only about Ash. Ray's sudden surge in power, his strange breakthrough to the next rank, and the fact that he could withstand the kind of raw force Ash unleashed left them speechless. It was hard to accept that someone could endure attacks that looked strong enough to crush bones with a single blow. Nothing was making sense. And then there was Ash. How was he this powerful? How could he cast spells instantly as if the process didn't exist? How was he so skilled in close combat, fighting like a trained warrior while still being labeled as a mage? How could his punches, which should have been weaker than any weapon strike, shake the ground with such terrifying power? And most importantly, was Ash truly a mage? After seeing the last move he pulled off, both Ash and Ray had become something more than students in the eyes of everyone. They were monsters. It's like a fight between monsters. Someone muttered in disbelief, but no one spoke afterward. They all felt the same way, as if they were watching beings far beyond their reach. However, not everyone was impressed. Among the female students, a storm of jealousy brewed. Nearly half of them were seething with anger, their thoughts circling back to Alicia. What does that bitch have for these two monsters to fight like this? That was the collective resentment echoing in their minds, and Alicia was slowly becoming the target of quiet hatred from more and more girls. Among the instructors, Leonard's reaction stood out. He stood frozen, his mouth slightly open, face painted with shock. But inside, his emotions were far from calm. He felt a rush of adrenaline and excitement, his body trembling from the sheer thrill of witnessing something so intense. Despite his age, the feeling of watching such an extraordinary fight made him want to jump, cheer, and scream. What the hell? What the hell? What the hell? He repeated in his mind like a broken record. He was just too overwhelmed by what he was seeing, his body shaking as he forced himself to stay composed. Yet, the one most shaken was none other than Ray himself. Sigh. Looks like I was right again. Etheris' calm voice echoed in his mind. When the whole unknown incident had taken place, Etheris had once suggested that maybe Ash was the mysterious figure. At the time, Ray had laughed it off, saying, "It can't be him. He has low potential, and I can't look at every lightning user as an enemy." But those words now came back to haunt him like an unshakable truth. You! Ray's lips trembled, but Ash was not listening. Fueled by despair and unrelenting determination, his fists only grew faster, sharper, and heavier with each strike. Bam! 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 You! Are you? Before Ray could even finish the thought, something happened. After 10 long, relentless minutes of pounding attacks, a faint whiteness began to shimmer over his body. The skill was finally reaching its limit. The glow deepened, brightening and growing denser with every passing second. Ray didn't speak either, as if he too knew what was coming. But beneath his calm exterior, unnatural fury surged through him. And just thinking about Ash being unknown made him angrier. After all, Unknown has? What had Unknown or Ash done to him? What had Ash truly done to him that made his blood boil like this? As Ray questioned himself, there was no answer. Ash had never harmed him or anyone close to him, never interfered with his path, never caused him any loss other than taking the runes. Yes, he took the runes. My runes. Ray's state was getting a little out of control, his thoughts twisting as if someone was pouring oil into the flames of his anger. Snap out of it, boy. Use the damn mind skill you purchased. Etheris' voice sliced through his chaotic thoughts like a sharp blade. Ray's mind shook awake. Without hesitation, he activated the skill, feeling a sudden wave of clarity sweep over him. His breathing steadied. What was that just now? So it really was... Huh? What? What do you mean? I know you're not ignorant enough to pretend you didn't notice it. Don't act like you're clueless. But I really don't understand what you mean. Oh? Etheris fell silent. It wasn't a silence of reluctance, but one that carried weight, as if the sword spirit had realized something terrifying and dared not speak it aloud. Or perhaps it couldn't. I need to calm down. I need to get out of these chains. My mana is dropping fast, and if I keep wasting aura like this, I won't last long. Just then, a strange instinct whispered at the edge of his mind, like advice, and his body moved before his thoughts could catch up. Overclock activated. Skill description. Temporarily increases all stats by 90% for 5 minutes. After the effect ends, the body suffers backlash, and the user will lose consciousness for 1 week. A surge of crimson energy exploded around Ray, clashing and weaving into the violet aura until both forces merged into a storm of raw power. The chains of lightning shattered apart like they were made of brittle glass. Even Ash, who had been so close, felt the raw pressure slash at his skin, his hands turning bloody from the violent force. Ash instantly leapt back, a flash of shock in his eyes. His hands healed within seconds, but his expression shifted, becoming cold and still, his mind as calm as an undisturbed lake. What the hell is happening? Don't tell me, but could it be? Ash's jaw tightened. Seeing Ray use overclock didn't make him feel triumphant like he might have expected. Usually, overclock meant Ray had only 5 minutes before his body collapsed into unconsciousness. But not this time. Damn it, how the hell is he learning this fast? How does he already know how to link overclock with Indomitable Mantle? Asterisk. Ash remembered it clearly. In the novel, Ray had only discovered this terrifying synergy much later, during a fight with someone far stronger. By then, his protective skill had already been close to fully charged. When overclock wore off, instead of falling unconscious, Indomitable Mantle absorbed all the excess force stored within it and replenished Ray's body, stabilizing him and letting him continue fighting as if nothing had happened. This was not supposed to happen now. Not here. Even so, Ash knew overclock could not be used twice in a row. The system itself punished such reckless strain. But one use was more than enough. Ray's body, now amplified by overclock and shielded by the Indomitable Mantle, had become something close to untouchable. Every ounce of strength, every attack that Ash threw would now struggle to even leave a scratch. Ash let out a slow breath, his eyes narrowing. This is going to get far more troublesome now. And troublesome it did. Ray's stats were now higher than Ash's. Before Ash could even process his next move, a devastating punch slammed straight into his chest, making his body shoot backward like a cannonball. The impact stole the breath from his lungs, blood spilling from his mouth as he was sent flying through the air, crashing out of the arena. Instructor Leonard's expression turned grim. For a brief moment, even he lost sight of Ray's movements. His instincts screamed at him to intervene. He stepped forward, ready to call off the match, but at that very moment, a sharp voice cut through his thoughts, resonating in his mind. Do not stop the fight. Intervene only if someone loses consciousness or is on the verge of death. His body halted. Slowly, he turned his gaze and saw the principal standing with an old man, both watching the fight with unshaken eyes. Leonard clenched his fists. His earlier excitement bled away, replaced by a heavy seriousness that weighed down his chest. The entire arena was deathly silent. The kind of silence that made the hair on the back of one's neck rise. The kind that felt unnatural, eerie, and heavy. Meanwhile, Ash's body, though battered, healed quickly. He stood up, but his instincts were flaring like warning sirens. Without a moment of hesitation, he teleported into the sky. It was the right decision. The very next second, Ray's sword aura cleaved through the ground where Ash had just been standing, creating a deep, gaping crater that left the spectators breathless. I need to stall for 5 minutes, but as always, it's not going to be easy. I'll have to keep moving, teleporting constantly, and not give him even a single opening to strike. Before Ash could finish his thoughts, the air exploded with a sharp boom. Ray had already leapt high, closing the distance in the blink of an eye. Did he just jump? That was the last coherent thought Ash had before his entire focus shifted. He could have teleported, but he knew there was at least a 1-second delay to activate it if he had already stopped moving. Once he started chaining teleports, there would be no delay between them, but if he paused for even a moment, that single second of activation could become fatal. So, with no time to risk that gap, he did what he could in that single heartbeat. He gathered every shred of his mana and poured it into his hands, layering them with a dense, hardened coating of energy, bracing himself to take the slash head-on. Boom! The impact was brutal. The shockwave alone sent a ripple of pain through his arms. Ash was thrown downward, crashing into the ground with a deafening thud, his body buried in a fresh crater. His crossed arms trembled under the force, and for a terrifying moment, he felt his hands nearly split apart. If not for his last-second reinforcement, they would have been severed. Lying there, Ash allowed his healing to kick in, repairing the damage before anyone could fully see the extent of his injuries. Then, without wasting even a breath, his body began flickering around the arena, teleporting, vanishing, reappearing in flashes. Each movement left afterimages in the air, creating the illusion that Ash was everywhere at once. But Ray was undeterred. With overclock fueling him, his own mana reserves were monstrous. His aura-coated blade moved like a storm, striking at every corner where Ash appeared. The deadly dance between the two unfolded in the center of the arena. A whirlwind of sword slashes, teleportation trails, and blinding flashes of lightning. The instructors had no choice but to step forward. Together, they raised a protective barrier to shield the students from the stray slashes and shockwaves. Even so, the barrier trembled violently under the sheer force of the attacks, cracks of energy running across its surface as if threatening to shatter at any second. The students, however, felt no safety from the barrier. They could feel the weight of the battle pressing down on their chests, suffocating them. Is this even the same world we live in? Are they even students like us? No, they can't be. I feel like I'm gonna throw up just from watching. If I was in that arena, I'd be dead before I even moved. They're monsters.
Actual monsters.
We're nothing compared to them. I thought I was strong. But now I feel like I'm just a joke. Their whispers and thoughts were all drowned by the overwhelming fear that clung to the arena like a suffocating fog. This fight was no longer something they could watch casually. It was a clash between two beings who stood on a level far beyond their understanding. Some students shook in awe, others in fear, their minds breaking under the realization of how vast the gap truly was. Would this fear spark determination within them, or would it crush their spirits completely? Only time would tell. Chapter 208. Ash vs. Ray 5. A strange scene was happening inside the arena. One side Ash was teleporting all over the place, creating an illusion that he was simultaneously present at many places. Meanwhile, Ray was dancing in the middle of the destroyed arena, his hands and body performing a deadly sword dance, his slashes sweeping through the air with terrifying precision, each strike leaving faint trails of violet aura behind. Those aura slashes were cutting through everything in their path, and the brunt of all those attacks was being absorbed by the barrier formed by the instructors. Even then, the barrier shuddered violently, small cracks appearing for a moment before being forcefully healed. The power radiating from every single strike was enough to make even experienced warriors feel uneasy. The arena itself was pretty much nowhere to be seen anymore. The once proud, elevated stage had been reduced to nothing but debris and dust, its surface completely shattered. Now the whole battlefield was simply the ground, torn and broken, the middle platform no longer existing. Somewhere from the crowd, Alice was also watching the fight, though she was hiding for reasons only she knew, concealing her presence so that no one realized she was even there. I knew Ray was strong. But this strong? I will be damned. What the hell is that child? She was truly shocked by the power he displayed. Even among geniuses, seeing someone use strength far above their rank was an extremely rare occurrence. But what are the chances that two of them appear in the same era and at the same age group? They are abysmal. She now understood why she was hesitating to bring up the topic of claiming Ash as her disciple. Deep down, her instincts already knew that he would refuse it. Of course he will. He is already this powerful. He only needs a bit of guidance and he can take care of the rest himself. At least she evaluated Ash to that extent. Boom! 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 Explosions echoed in the arena, shockwaves spreading as Ray and Ash clashed. This destruction continued for almost 5 minutes, until finally Ray's skill began to wear off. But it was not like Ash was unscathed. Because of how fast he was teleporting, everyone thought Ash was dodging every strike. But the truth was different. There were moments when Ray's attacks would land on him, almost cutting his body apart, only for those wounds to heal within seconds. Ash didn't know if it was luck, Ray predicting his movements, or simply the difference in stats, but one way or another, it was true that he was still hurt. As soon as the crimson glow around Ray faded, his body staggered and the whiteness of the protective skin around him began to fade slowly. It was getting absorbed into his body. But Ash did not waste this chance. The rain, which had been falling in steady sheets, suddenly turned into a heavy downpour, hammering against the ruined arena and soaking the broken ground. Yet none of it mattered to him. His focus was locked entirely on Ray, every thought sharpened to a single point. This is my chance. Even if Ray would recover after using overclock, this was still his first time experiencing such a sudden surge, being drained of all energy and then filled with power again. That kind of violent shift was not something the body or mind could adapt to instantly. He was bound to feel uncomfortable, maybe even lose focus for a fleeting moment. Using that as an opportunity, Ash teleported behind him and hugged Ray's body tightly like a raccoon clinging to a tree. Although he could have used his lightning chains again to bind Ray and follow up with a barrage of attacks, this time Ash knew Ray would not let his energy build up freely. He would definitely release it before reaching the limit. So Ash didn't try to repeat the same thing. What he needed was a single attack powerful enough to exceed the skill's limit in one strike, something that would force it to crumble immediately. And to produce such an attack, Ash needed something else. Saints were said to be natural disasters, forces of nature themselves, often referred to as gods among men. But they were not gods. Their powers were only slightly beyond the forces of nature, not truly divine. So Ash simply had to use nature as well. And what could be better than lightning, the very element he was most attuned to, especially in the middle of a thunderstorm. The dark clouds covered the entire sky now, glowing with violent flashes of lightning. Ash just needed 1 or 2 direct strikes, maybe more, and Ray's skill would surpass its limit. But that was easier said than done. First, he needed something to act as a lightning rod. And since there was nothing else he could use, Ash would have to become the lightning rod himself. I can't die. Ray won't die either, not with that skill of his. If I time everything perfectly, it will work. With this reckless plan forming in his mind, Ash tightened his grip around Ray's torso like a raccoon refusing to let go of a tree. In the next moment, both of them vanished from sight. There was no trace of them anywhere. The audience was stunned, staring at the empty space with wide eyes. Their shock was so overwhelming that many of them instinctively stood up, unable to process what had just happened. "Where did they go?" someone whispered, their voice trembling slightly. "Are they fighting in another dimension now? Don't be stupid. That's impossible, right?"
Impossible?
After what we've seen today, nothing feels impossible anymore. I swear I blinked for half a second and they were gone. Don't tell me they're above us. Oh crap, check the sky. As soon as those words left someone's mouth, a chain reaction occurred, and everyone's gaze shot upward in shock. But even before that voice, the saints and the instructors had already turned their eyes to the sky, sensing the storm of mana gathering above. Far above the arena, almost blending into the dark clouds, Ray and Ash reappeared. At that height, the wind howled violently, but Ash's body was unmoving, locked onto his opponent with a death grip. Slowly, his entire body began to radiate lightning mana, and in mere moments, a layer of raw, destructive energy wrapped around him like a second skin. The arcs of lightning snapped and hissed in the air, illuminating his figure like a living storm. This wasn't just for show. By forcing lightning mana through every corner of his body, Ash had turned himself into the perfect lightning rod, artificially increasing his electrical potential to attract the storm's fury. What the? How am I in the sky? Ray's thoughts faltered, his mind struggling to process what was happening. But before he could even understand, blinding whiteness consumed everything. The world around him disappeared in that instant, replaced by a flash so intense it left no room for shadows. Even though he felt no pain, an instinctive chill ran down his spine, a primal warning that screamed danger louder than anything else. A low, guttural rumble followed, like the growl of an ancient beast. It wasn't a beast, though. It was the storm itself, roaring in fury as the lightning tore through the sky and struck them. When the blinding light receded, Ray's focus returned, but the sight left him shaken. They were still suspended high in the air, but his skill was glowing faintly again, a soft white hue forming around his body, signaling that the indomitable mantle was close to reaching its limit. "You were struck by lightning." Hearing Etheris's calm voice in his mind, Ray's heart skipped a beat. His eyes widened, but what shocked him more wasn't the strike. It was Ash. He was still holding on to him, his hands gripping like iron chains. Both of their academy uniforms were charred and torn apart, smoke rising lazily from the fabric, as though the storm had tried and failed to burn them down. "What you are thinking is correct." Ash deliberately turned his own body into a conductor to attract the lightning. The words were so absurd, so reckless, that Ray almost shouted at him. What kind of maniac would willingly call lightning onto themselves just to push my skill to the limit? But before he could speak, a strange tension filled the air again. The atmosphere around them began to buzz, vibrating with violent energy, and even the dark clouds above seemed to tremble in response. Ash leaned closer, his voice low, edged with a grin that felt half insane and half exhilarated. "Eat my divine attack again, you bastard!" And then the sky itself split apart. Boom! Whiteness. It was the only thing that filled Ray's vision, a blinding surge that devoured everything around him. He earlier wanted to trigger his skill to discharge the energy, but lightning was faster than any reaction he could muster. struck like a predator, unrelenting and absolute. When the whiteness finally receded, Etheirys was silent once again. Rey noticed the unusual silence of his companion, but there was no time to think about why Etheirys was speaking less or what he might be thinking, because they were falling from an absurd, stomach-twisting height. The wind screamed past his ears, whipping against his face and roaring so loud it almost drowned out his thoughts. He sensed a presence close by and turned his head. Ash was right next to him, also falling upside down. And he was smiling. It was not the smile of someone panicking or desperate. No, this was a grin filled with fun, mockery, and a thrill that bordered on madness. There was something almost lunatic about it, like he was enjoying every moment of this insane fall. Strangely enough, Ash did not have a single injury on his body. Well, the same was true for Rey, but that only made the situation feel more unreal. And yet, Rey could see faint white sparks flickering and fading across his own skin, remnants of his skill that had been forcefully overcharged. Ash had done it. He had pushed Indomitable Mantle beyond its limits. Now, that skill would not respond for the entire day. The fading sparks were proof of that. Rey's gaze turned cold the moment their eyes met. Now that the microphones embedded in their academy uniforms were destroyed, they could finally speak freely without anyone listening in. You are unknown, aren't you, you bastard? Rey growled furiously, grabbing Ash's collar even in their upside-down free fall, his voice sharp with anger and frustration. Yes, I am. So what? Ash's voice came out slow and almost lazy, as if this revelation meant nothing to him. His tone carried a quiet confidence, the kind of confidence that came from knowing he could take Alicia and escape in an instant if anything went wrong. And deep down, Ash knew something else too. Rey would not tell anyone about this. Why? Because Rey had his own secrets. Chapter 209. Ash versus Rey 6. Yes, I am. So what? Ash spoke almost lazily, as if even the confession carried no weight for him. He was done pretending. For what little he had ever wanted to hide, Ash knew there was no point anymore. The demons already knew about him because Zarek had escaped, and that alone had blown apart the fragile veil of secrecy he once tried to maintain. The Saints were aware of his existence too, so what was the point in hiding? It's not like he was going to commit some heinous crime that required his identity to remain in the shadows. Although he knew things would become unnecessarily complicated if Rey started spreading this around, Ash's expression didn't waver. But so what? Ash didn't care now. What would Rey do? Kill him? Would Ash die? Been there. Done that. Death was not something Ash feared anymore. In fact, the very concept of fear had been burned out of him long ago. Even if one didn't consider the strange influence of the rune, Ash's fear of death had simply vanished, leaving behind a hollow defiance that bordered on madness. He also knew Rey wouldn't tell anyone about this. Why? Because Rey himself was drowning in secrets, the kind that shackled him just as much as they gave him strength. Truthfully, Ash didn't hate Rey, and why should he? Yeah, Rey was annoyingly perfect, a system-blessed protagonist, a walking bundle of cheats and luck, absolutely infuriating at times. But that was all. There was no deep-seated hatred, no real grudge. As long as Rey stayed away from Alicia, Ash had no reason to care. Well, the same could not be said for Rey. Rey's null mind was still active, keeping his emotions in check, but the anger in his voice bled through the cracks of that calm. Why did you do that? Why? Rey's voice carried a weight, as though this question had been festering inside him. Ash tilted his head slightly, genuinely confused. I did what? Why did you take my runes? Rey demanded. Ash let out a low scoff, almost mocking, and with a sharp push of his hand, he shoved Rey slightly away. Their bodies drifted apart in the free fall, maintaining a hand's length of distance as the air roared between them. Your runes? Are you delusional? I didn't see your name carved into them. Are you sure they were yours? Rey froze. The anger he had been holding on to faltered, replaced by a silence so heavy it almost felt like the storm above them paused to listen. They stared at each other in mid-air, their gazes unflinching, both testing the weight of the other's resolve. Why did you do that? I mean, Ray's voice dropped, colder now, steadier. Why did you interfere with my fate? With the fate of this world? He asked again, but this time, his tone carried something far deeper. A question that wasn't born just from anger, but from a gnawing confusion and dread. Why I did that, you ask? Ash spoke, his tone strangely composed. He crossed his arms and continued. I did because the world was supposed to be destroyed. I changed the fate of the world. You ask why I took the runes? Because if they had fallen into your hands, the world's fate would tilt towards the end. He spoke like someone who had seen this truth unfold countless times, his voice carrying an unsettling conviction. You might be thinking that I am speaking nonsense, but just buy a lie detection skill from the system shop and you will know whether I am lying or not. The moment the words system shop left Ash's lips, Ray's eyes widened. He was utterly shocked, as though someone had just torn open the secret he had buried deeper than anyone could imagine. His biggest secret was out, and Ash spoke it like it was something trivial. But Ash was not done yet. Don't ask me why or how I know this. I just know it. Simple as that. I did what I could to prevent it though. The rest, you already know what happened. And isn't your goal to eradicate the demons? Just do that. And one more thing. Stay away from Alicia. She is mine. His tone was not loud or threatening, but the calmness of his voice made it even more dangerous. The words sank deep, carrying a cold finality that made Ray's expression tighten. As long as you do this much, I won't interfere with what you do. And I don't understand why you need the runes anyway. You have the system, the Godslayer sword, which holds countless techniques, and on top of that, you have all affinities along with a God rank class. I don't know why you want the runes. Ash's voice lowered slightly, almost like he was speaking from somewhere deeper within. His words carrying a weight Ray could feel even as they fell through the air together. Only I know how much I have suffered because of them. Stay happy with all that you already have. Though they are powerful beyond imagination, I also can't deny. But Ash did not say that part out loud. Hearing his words, Ray's expression became complicated, as if a battle was raging within his mind. One side of him refused to believe anything Ash had said, while the other side whispered a quiet, unsettling possibility. What if he's right? After all, Ash knew about the system and even about Etheris. His words weren't baseless, they made sense in a twisted way. But still, there was also the nagging question of why the system would issue quests to eliminate the so-called Fate Disruptor. From everything Ray knew, his system was not evil, nor had it ever forced him to do anything that could be called unjust. So he was left conflicted. Should he trust Ash, or should he trust his system? And before he could even make that choice, Ash's voice echoed again, casual yet laced with something sharp. I am going to apologize in advance, because this is going to hurt a lot now. After all, the duel isn't over yet. That was the last clear thought Ray had, before the world tilted violently. A punch struck him with such force that his entire body spun crazily in the air while falling. And as if that wasn't enough, before Ray could even touch the ground, Ash teleported, appearing right next to him, and slammed a devastating strike, knocking him out cold. Ray's distracted mind and hesitation made the process all too easy. That was intense, Ash muttered inwardly, brushing back his long wet hairs that had come loose when the lightning struck earlier. Though his body carried no traces of damage, it was in perfect condition. In fact, being struck by lightning seemed to have sharpened his control over his own element, making him feel even more attuned to its rhythm. Now, Ash stood at the center of the arena, unscathed and almost majestic, while Ray lay unconscious on the ground. Both of them had nothing on their upper bodies except for torn scraps of fabric clinging to their lower halves. Ash made no attempt to activate absolute concealment to hide his natural charisma. The cat was already out of the bag. There was no point in pretending anymore. Yeah, I really need something to suppress my charm. I guess I'll have to visit Gary again. Ash's eyes then turned toward Instructor Leonard, and he almost chuckled when he saw the man's face. The expression Leonard wore was so frozen, so utterly stunned, that it bordered on comical. "Instructor, can you announce the result?" Ash asked in a calm and steady voice. The words seemed to snap Leonard back to reality. He stuttered, voice trembling, as if the weight of what he had just witnessed was still crushing him. "Ash B. Byrne is the winner of the duel." Yet no one cheered. Not a single sound rose from the crowd except the downpour of the rain. The arena was drowned in an eerie silence, the kind of silence that felt heavy and suffocating, as if everyone had just witnessed something they shouldn't have, something that made their very souls uneasy. Ash glanced around briefly, confused by the silence, but shrugged it off. Stretching his arms casually, he began walking toward the exit of the arena. As for why he didn't teleport out, why is no one clapping or shouting my name? I thought they would start cheering for me as soon as instructor announced me as the winner. Ash had imagined leaving the arena in style, with the crowd shouting and chanting his name, their admiration washing over him like a wave. But not a single voice rose, forcing him to make his way out step by step. What Ash didn't realize was that nobody dared to cheer. It wasn't admiration holding their tongues, it was fear. Yes, they feared Ash. After all, he had just defeated the monstrous first-year prodigy of the academy as though it were nothing, displaying powers beyond their comprehension. He had become a living symbol of power and terror, making everyone silently vow never to cross either Ash or Alicia. Chapter 210. Hatching 1. 1 week passed after the duel, and the news of Ash defeating Ray spread through the entire academy like wildfire. At first, many students didn't even believe it. How could Ray, the prodigy who had always stood at the very peak of their generation, be defeated? It sounded absurd, almost like a bad joke. But disbelief only lasted until the video of their battle began to circulate within the academy's inner circle. The footage didn't spread beyond the academy walls, though. Such was the strict control of the academy. They made sure no one outside could witness the overwhelming and destructive power displayed that day, because if they did, it would shake far more than just the academy's reputation. After that day, Ash became a name that carried weight and fear. Even though he never threatened anyone, even though he wasn't the type to flaunt his power, people feared him instinctively. That's how humans were. They feared the unknown, the unexplainable, and Ash's strength was exactly that. It was far beyond comprehension. He was no longer just another student in their eyes. He had become something different, a figure they couldn't hope to compete with, an existence that stood far above them. Ash noticed the changes around him soon enough. Whenever he walked into a class, it felt as if all eyes turned toward him, silently whispering about the events of the duel. It wasn't admiration, it was fear. No one could properly focus on lectures when he was there. Some students stared at him openly, while others avoided his gaze, as if meeting his eyes might bring trouble. Their unease was almost suffocating, and it was beginning to distract even the instructors. So Ash did what he thought was best. He stopped attending most classes. Of the 5 subjects he had chosen, 3 were purely theoretical, so he could easily study those on his own. As for the combat class, he simply didn't attend anymore. Instructor Leonard, having witnessed Ash's power firsthand, didn't object. Perhaps he knew there was no point in teaching someone who had already surpassed most of the academy's students by miles. So he daily sparred with Ash after all his classes were over. The only class Ash still attended was mana manipulation, taught by instructor Elva. That class was still useful to him, but the rest of his time, he spent it in the academy's library, where the silence suited him and the shelves of books became his true battlefield. Now that he had awakened his soul library, there was no limit to how much he could absorb and store within his mind. His brain was no longer bound by human constraints. He didn't just read books anymore, he devoured knowledge. Even subjects he had previously ignored, he now studied with careful attention. He had also borrowed books from the Dragon Library, which he returned as soon as he finished reading them. Most of those texts were focused on advanced magic theories and breathing techniques. Unfortunately, the breathing techniques didn't help him much. Dragons didn't need such methods. Their dragon hearts were powerful enough to accomplish what other races needed techniques for. Still, he read them carefully. Most of the breathing methods he studied were ancient, far older and far less refined than the ones currently practiced in this era. Yet, even these flawed methods carried some interesting insights into mana flow and body enhancement. Right now, Ash was seated by a large arched window on the second floor of the library, the kind of spot that remained undisturbed by the usual crowd. The window overlooked the academy's sprawling campus and the distant dormitories. The sky outside was slowly shifting into the warm glow of the afternoon sun. A cool breeze filtered through the slightly open window, rustling the edges of the book he was holding. The text before him detailed an ancient breathing technique, one rumored to have been practiced by a forgotten warrior tribe. The method was considered obsolete now, but Ash studied it with an unreadable expression, his fingers lightly tracing the faded ink, as if trying to feel the meaning hidden in every word. Do not attempt to pour the ocean into a cracked cup. When the storm of power is drawn, the mortal frame must become as unyielding as mountain stone, lest it be shattered by the gift it seeks. The words were weathered and incomplete, forcing Ash to read them again and again, hoping to piece together the deeper meaning that seemed to slip through the cracks like mist. Reading the sentences wasn't hard. Understanding them, however, was. The spirit is the raw iron, the cores are the hearths, but the breath is the bellows. A gentle, steady breath maintains the embers. A short, sharp gust awakens the sleeping flame, followed by a long, deep draw to make it roar. Ash tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing in thought. I think this one tells how to breathe. A short breath followed by a long one, like stoking a forge. His focus deepened, his breathing unconsciously aligning with the rhythm described in the passage, when suddenly a voice broke through his concentration. Are you reading the same thing as yesterday? Ash looked up, blinking as if pulled out of another world. A faint smile touched his lips. Yeah, same old breathing techniques. What about you? What did you learn today? Alicia slipped into the seat in front of him, her silver hair damp, her face flushed with the warmth of a recent shower. There was a faint, clean scent of fresh water and soap around her, mixing with the smell of old parchment in the library. Her expression was one of tired satisfaction, like someone who had just wrestled with exhaustion but still found a strange kind of joy in it. Just repeated the same strike 1,000 times and did some basic exercises, she said, leaning back slightly as if even sitting upright required effort. I see. Is she teaching you well? Ash asked, his tone light but his eyes quietly observing her mood. Duh! Of course she is. She's a saint after all, Alicia replied with a hint of pride, but then her voice softened. But I heard people muttering that she took me as her disciple because of you. I don't know why, but I had mixed feelings when I heard that. She exhaled slowly, lowering her gaze for a moment as if weighing her thoughts. On one side, I was happy because of you I got this opportunity. On the other side, I was mad at myself for being so weak. Ash didn't interrupt, letting her words settle between them like the soft rustle of pages. But after sigh, she caught herself, quickly correcting her tone. Master Alice told me that she took me as her disciple not because of you, but because she saw something in me. I don't know what that is though. She didn't tell me. After Alicia woke up, before she even heard the news about Ash and Ray's fight, Alice had approached her and asked a single, piercing question. Did she truly want to become strong? The desperation in her heart gave her answer before her lips could. She agreed without hesitation, without even stopping to think. From that day, her training started in earnest. Alice pushed her to the very edge, and though Alicia still attended classes when she could, she often had to skip some of them. Her body ached every day, but she endured it, carrying that relentless will to grow stronger. Now, after taking a fresh shower to wash away the sweat and fatigue, she was here, sitting across from Ash, her expression still slightly weary but softened by the comfort of his presence. So, Ash, what do you plan on doing in the future? The question made Ash tilt his head, as if weighing it in his mind. Future plans? He didn't really have any. He didn't know what he was supposed to do or where he was supposed to go. He was simply moving forward with the flow of events, taking each day as it came. But there was one thing, at least, that he needed to handle soon. I guess I will go to a blacksmith and ask him to make some charm suppressors. Alicia's eyes dimmed slightly at his words. She turned her head, glancing to the side. This quiet corner of the academy library wasn't particularly famous, and the available seats were few. But every single one of them was taken. And every single one of those seats was occupied by a girl, while most were standing. Not just sitting or standing quietly, but peeking at Ash from behind books, pretending to read while sneaking glances. The moment Alicia's sharp gaze swept across them, they scrambled to focus back on their pages like nothing happened. Those bitches. The thought burned in her head, and for a brief moment, she wanted nothing more than to throw a book at each of them. But this was the library, she couldn't make a scene here. And she couldn't stop Ash from coming either. Not when he devoured this many books in a single day. It was impossible to carry them all back to his dorm. Wasn't that the exact reason she made time to meet him here every day? Even though they spent most of their time together after classes, she still wanted this, the quiet hours where it felt like the rest of the world faded. Yeah, you should get that as soon as possible, Alicia muttered, her voice cold enough to make her feelings obvious. Ash chuckled softly, his amusement clear. Don't laugh. Yeah, I won't. They talked for a while longer, the conversation light and unhurried, until Alicia finally had to leave for her next class. But as she walked away, her eyes still burned like fire, glaring at the girls who dared to keep staring at Ash even now, fully aware that he was already taken. Ash, as usual, paid them no attention. Once Alicia left, he sank back into his books, letting the silence wrap around him. 10 seconds, no more, passed before it hit him. A sudden jolt tore through his soul. It wasn't just a flicker of mana or a passing sensation. No, this was sharp and cold, something that made his breath catch and his entire body shudder without warning. His eyes widened as if instinct itself was screaming at him. What? Chapter 211. Hatching 2. Before Ash could get back to reading the books again, his body suddenly shuddered. A strange jolt ran through his soul, making his entire being feel a little off, almost like a ripple in still water that leaves behind a peculiar warmth and chill at the same time. It was a strange sensation, somewhat disturbing and somewhat pleasant at the same time. A conflicting feeling that stirred unease in his heart. What? He quickly closed his eyes and turned his focus inward, into his soul space, and then, how? It was normal until just yesterday. Oh damn, right? There is a time difference in there. Shit! Springing to his feet, Ash didn't waste a second. He stored all the books in a hurry and teleported away. Although using spells or abilities on academy grounds, especially in places like the library or other important areas, was heavily restricted and considered a serious breach of rules, Ash didn't have time to care. He would either have to accept a deduction in merit points or deal with whatever punishment came his way later. Because right now, he was in a rush. The egg was about to hatch. The moment he appeared inside his dorm room, he was just about to bring out the egg when suddenly, he felt someone whispering into his mind. It wasn't a voice he heard with his ears, but something far more intimate, like a thought not his own gently echoing in his head. He had never experienced anything like that before, but strangely, he could still understand what the thought meant. I want to stay inside. Ash's eyes widened in disbelief and surprise. Wait, don't tell me, is this the feelings of the egg? Keeping those strange words in his mind, Ash immediately entered his soul space himself. Before arriving at the academy, he had collected the egg from the Unicorn Queen, and although Solareth still hadn't returned after taking the demonic heart. After that, he placed the egg carefully inside his vault, and the moment he did that, something strange had happened. Ash had felt as if something was sucking his soul. Yeah, sucking was the right word. It was far from a pleasant experience, and the sensation had made him extremely uncomfortable at first, but after a full day, he gradually got used to it. Realizing that the egg wasn't harming him or making him weaker in any way, Ash simply let it be. He knew the egg was somehow absorbing his soul essence, though he had no idea how or why. Still, he could guess. Just like how his blood acted like a miraculous medicine for others, it wouldn't be strange if his soul worked the same way, especially since his soul wasn't a normal one to begin with, but a mutated form that even had runes present in it. It would make sense that his soul might be even more of a panacea than his blood. Maybe that's why the egg gave up on his blood and instead began absorbing essence from his soul itself. And right now he felt that jolt because there was a crack on the egg's surface. As soon as Ash stepped inside the onyx floor of the soul vault, his eyes widened the moment he saw the egg, completely shocked by its appearance. It had undergone a 180-degree transformation in just one day, though technically that single day in reality could have been approximately 4 years inside the vault. Damn it, I really need to take care of this time problem. It's starting to create too many complications. Although the egg itself wasn't the issue right now, still, right now it looked nothing like before. It was seated at the center of the vault, nested within a shallow pool of Ash's blood. The surface of the egg had turned a pure, shimmering white, eerily similar to the shade of Ash's hair. Nothing remained of its previous reddish hue. But even that wasn't the most shocking part. Its entire surface was now covered in glowing, multicolored runic symbols, each pulsating with energy. They shone so brightly that they seemed to illuminate the entire vault, almost like a beacon in the darkness of night. A mist, thick and strange, clung to its shell, something that didn't look like mana or aura, and was hard to identify, yet it felt strangely divine in nature. And then, finally, there it was, a crack. A fine crack had formed, and even as he looked, it suddenly widened. Oh shit! Running quickly and appearing in front of the egg, Ash panicked slightly. What do I do? Do I need to prepare food for the baby? Should I feed it right after it comes out? No, wait, I shouldn't do that, right? But then again, babies drink their mother's milk when they're born. But where in the world will I find a mother? Will it even drink milk? I mean, this isn't a normal animal. It's a mythical beast, isn't it? Not a dragon, but something even rarer. Something that was thought to be extinct? Solareth did tell me I'd be surprised when it hatches. Could it be a phoenix? Or something else entirely? I don't know. Should I prepare some meat instead? Although this was technically an egg he stole. Something he probably shouldn't have done. But well, it was already in the past. What was done was done. He couldn't go back and undo it, but what he could do was make up for it now. He could take care of the baby with everything he had, protect it, raise it with love. Wouldn't that, in some way, lessen the weight of his sin? Even if he knew deep down, he might end up carrying endless sins in the future anyway. After all, the future was unpredictable. Damn it! I know nothing. I thought I would have more time, so I didn't bother learning about any of this stuff. But then again, only a few weeks have passed for me. For the egg, though, who knows how much time has already gone by. Just then, the crack on the egg started to spread, slowly at first, but soon it began to spiderweb like a mirror shattering under pressure. Ash watched, stunned, as his blood began to get sucked in through the cracks, vanishing drop by drop, as if the egg was devouring it hungrily, greedily. And when the very last drop of blood was consumed, the surface of the egg stilled for a breath, then cracked apart with a soft plink. From the top, something small emerged. A head, a snow-white, glossy head poked out from within, round and tiny with smooth, delicate scales that shimmered faintly under the lights of the soul vault. There was a softness in its gaze, something impossibly pure. Mama! Ash held his breath, because what emerged was so cute. The egg then fully shattered, pieces turning into light particles before being completely absorbed into the tiny white creature's body. It was a baby snake, pure white in color, its scales smooth and glistening faintly, the same snowy white shade as Ash's hair. Its size was barely more than his forearm in length, almost small enough to coil around his wrist, and as wide as his 3 fingers. There were 2 barely visible horns growing just above its eyes, and its pupils shimmered in the same soft, deep blue as Ash's. Honestly, it looked like a miniature version of him, if he had been reborn in snake form. Ash slowly knelt down, both curious and hesitant, and extended his hands forward, gently trying to lift it. The little white snake tilted its head slightly, its gaze flicking between Ash's hands and his face. Then, it blinked slowly and spoke in a soft voice once again.
Mama.
Ash blinked. No, it's Papa.
Mama. Papa. Mama.
This time, it tilted its head again, nodded with adorable confidence, and sank its teeth right into his hand. Ash's smile froze on his lips, unmoving. Why do I feel this has happened before? Yeah, it had. The unicorn baby had also bitten his hand the first time. But thinking of that, he realized Little White was still better. At least it didn't eat his hands completely. And besides, this was his soul body, not his real one, thankfully. Knowing that, Ash hurriedly brought the baby snake outside into the real world. But the moment he stepped out, he immediately regretted thinking that Little White was better. Because, what the heck? Why do I feel like something's wrong all of a sudden? Ash collapsed onto his bed as a sudden wave of weakness washed over him. It was as if something was draining every bit of life from his body. His limbs felt hollow, his chest ached, and his breath grew shallow. When he glanced at his hands, he saw they had turned pale and dry, like the cracked hands of a mummy. The same thing was now happening to the rest of his body. Panic surged within him, but he forced himself to stay calm. A few seconds later, he felt something change. His dried-up hand slowly began to return to normal, the skin regaining its color and strength little by little because of the healing effect of Rune of Life. The reason for all this became clear as soon as he turned his gaze toward the culprit. The little gluttonous white snake was resting near him. Its tiny fangs still latched onto his arm as it drank his blood like a baby drinking warm milk. Peacefully, lovingly, as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Ash looked at it with a complicated expression. He didn't know whether to scold it or hug it. His heart, however, melted just a bit more. It's cute, but what creature even is it? Solareth told me I'd know when the time came, but I still can't figure it out. Should I go ask the queen? But just as the question slipped from his lips, a soft chime echoed in his mind, and a status screen materialized in front of his eyes, clear and radiant, floating in the air like an answer from the heavens. Ash's eyes widened as he scanned the glowing text. Chapter 212, Primordial Serpent. Status. Name? Race, Primordial Serpent. Age 0. Rank, Hatchling F. Affinity, Life, Death, Space. Innate abilities. Magic immunity. Immunity against all kinds of magical attacks. Spatial step. Instantly teleports to any place it has seen or sensed before. Soul scent. Able to track prey from thousands of kilometers away by sensing the unique signature of their soul energy. Toxin adaptation. Instantly adapts to any poison, disease, or environmental hazard, then produces an even deadlier counterpoison. Soulbound. Can use the passive effects of all the runes fused with its master soul. Master Ash Burn. Ash stayed still for a while, his eyes locked on the status window, his thoughts swirling like a whirlpool. This was beyond surprising for him. Primordial Serpent. He had never even read a single mention of such a creature in any record or book he had come across. Not even in the novel. Solareth said I'd know when I saw it, but I know nothing about a primordial serpent. What in the world is this thing? There were no numerical stats shown. It felt as if the window was deliberately hiding most of its information from him. The only reason he could even see this much, he suspected, was because of the unique bond he shared with the little white serpent. Still, he couldn't ignore the feeling that the runes had something to do with the change in information provided by Solareth. Its abilities were incredible for a newborn, far beyond anything that should be possible for a hatchling. But the last one, Soulbound, made his heartbeat quicken. Does that mean, can use everything? Regeneration, revival, knowledge, balance, all of it? The thought was nothing short of astonishing. It opened up possibilities in his mind, each one more tempting and dangerous than the last, until his thoughts felt like they were bursting in all directions. He forced himself to set those ideas aside for now and looked at the baby serpent. It had just finished its meal and was now lazily coiling itself around his neck, rubbing its small head against his cheek as if claiming him. Ash felt his chest warm at the sight. Right? Let's name you. No, wait, we'll name you after you meet Alicia. I'm sure she'd love to see you too. He spoke softly, cupping the tiny serpent in his hands.
Mama?
Yes, yes, I'll show you your mama. Mama. As if perfectly understanding his words, the little white serpent bobbed its head up and down like a duck, letting out a small hiss that sounded almost happy.
Goo.
I can't wait to see Alicia's reaction. So, you were saying you stole an egg? Alicia asked with a cold voice, her tone low and steady, yet carrying an edge sharp enough to make Ash feel as if the temperature in the room had dropped. What's with this atmosphere? Ash thought, his shoulders tensing as he shifted uncomfortably under her unwavering gaze. The little white serpent, still curled loosely around his neck, tilted its head upward to look at her, its bright eyes full of innocent curiosity. Why yes, this is a fantasy world, and I was just… Ash's voice trailed as he stuttered, almost as if some part of him didn't want to complete the sentence. What? I just wanted a cool companion, like the ones I've read about in books. But as her stare held firm, unblinking, he felt himself give in and admit, at least to himself, that it hadn't only been about that. There had been another reason, a selfish, intrusive impulse he couldn't quite defend. Damn it, where did it even go wrong? First, everything had seemed fine. Alicia had been genuinely shocked when she first saw the serpent resting against him, its white body coiled like a scarf. She had even nearly screamed, her expression a perfect mix of disbelief and surprise. Honestly, he had enjoyed watching that reaction. But after the initial shock faded, her expression changed. The look she gave him was far from amused. And now here they were, in his room. Ash sat on the floor with his head slightly lowered, his posture tense. Alicia sat on his bed, her legs crossed and arms folded, looking down at him like a queen passing judgment, her shadow falling over him. Without warning, Ash felt her hands slide around his neck. This time, there was no warmth in her touch. Her fingers were cold, almost unfeeling. Leaning in, her lips close to his ear, she whispered, her voice calm but carrying a quiet, dangerous weight. How would you feel if our child was taken away from us before we even got to see him or her? The words sank into the air slowly, deliberately, each one hitting heavier than the last. Alicia wasn't sure how he would respond. She knew Ash Byrne in this life was not the same as the one she had known before, and she wasn't certain if saying something this deeply personal was the right choice. But she did not back away. Still leaning close, she asked again, this time softer yet sharper. Tell me, Ash. The atmosphere in the room shifted entirely, turning tense and cold. Even the little white serpent could sense it. It hissed softly, its body coiling more tightly around Ash's neck as if ready to defend him, its gaze fixed on Alicia with surprising hostility. Before it could react any further, Ash raised a hand to lightly hold it back. He met Alicia's eyes and answered in a steady tone. I understand. I am sorry. I will never do that again. Promise. Yes. Alicia's expression eased, though only slightly. But then her relief turned into confusion as she saw him rise to his feet. Huh? Where are you going, Ash? He didn't answer immediately, moving toward the door with the serpent still draped around his neck. His steps were slow and deliberate. He opened the door, and just before stepping out, he turned to look at her. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were cold. So cold they made her heart still for a moment. Don't say something like that again, he said quietly, his voice flat, almost emotionless. Then he shut the door behind him. Bang! The sharp sound echoed through the room, leaving Alicia in complete silence. The air felt heavier now, and in the stillness, the faint hiss of the little serpent seemed to linger in her ears like a ghost. Ash? Her heart gave a sudden, uneven thud, an involuntary shudder running through her chest. The feeling was unpleasant, almost suffocating, as if something cold had slipped into her veins. Her gaze lost focus, drifting aimlessly as her thoughts spun in circles. Inside her mind, the image of Ash's cold, distant eyes kept flashing over and over again, each memory making her heartbeat grow louder and louder, until it seemed as if the sound itself filled the room. Does that mean he wants a baby with me? The moment the thought took shape, her heart rate spiked unnaturally high, pounding so hard that if anyone else had been in the room, they could have noticed it without even trying. Her lips curved slowly into a smile, one so wide it almost felt unnatural, eerie even. But as quickly as it appeared, it softened, her expression returning to normal, though the light in her eyes had changed. I need to apologize to him, my Ash. He must be angry. What should I do? Should I prepare something for him? No, I alone am enough. There's no need for a gift. Without another thought, she stood up abruptly, her movements quick and restless. The bed creaked softly as she pushed herself away from it, her steps already carrying her toward the door. She left the room in a hurry, determination in every stride, following after Ash. Melissa POV. Crash. Crash. Damn it. Damn it. Just leave it. Melissa's room looked as if a storm had torn through it. Every single thing was destroyed. Shattered glass, splintered wood, clothes scattered like fallen leaves. Even the bed had been smashed into broken pieces. And yet she kept going, breaking whatever was still standing. Crash. Damn that bitch. Does she even know what she's stolen? Does she even care? I hope she burns knowing she's just some stupid prize to him. Curse them both. May their happiness rot in agony. Her hands were covered in blood, shards of glass embedded deep in her skin. Yet she didn't care. She slammed her fists against the wall again and again, grinding the glass in further, feeling the warm wetness drip down her arms as the cuts grew deeper. Why am I the one tearing apart on the inside while they laugh and flirt like it's a damn game? Screw fate. Screw love. Screw everything. I'm sick of being invisible. WHYYYYYY? Her voice cracked, raw from screaming. Tears streamed down her cheeks like an endless flood, hot and uncontrollable, showing no sign of stopping. The rooms were vibration and soundproof, making no sound escape from her room. It had been a week since the duel, but the storm inside her hadn't calmed. No matter how much time passed, the bitterness clung to her like chains she couldn't break. For the last 7 days, she had locked herself inside her room. She hadn't eaten a single bite of food, only drinking water now and then, almost unconsciously, as if her body was moving on its own. Of course, anyone looking from the outside might think people should be worried about her by now, but they weren't. Before locking herself away, she had used her stockpile of merit points to request an indefinite leave from classes. She gave no return date, and in this academy that wasn't unusual. It wasn't the first time someone had shut themselves away like this. Many students did it for closed-door training or intense study sessions, often with enough food stored in their space rings to last weeks. So no one knocked on her door. In their minds, she was probably just motivated by Ash's victory over Ray and had thrown herself into training to get stronger. But reality was far from that. Instead of growing, she was crumbling. Instead of finding strength, she was falling apart. And every second she spent alone in that wrecked room, she could feel the pieces of herself breaking even more. Chapter 213, Snow. Moonlight was falling softly on the rain-filled grass and trees, the lingering droplets clinging to leaves and blades of grass catching the light, making the whole garden shine in an unusually mesmerizing way. The air was cool and damp, carrying that faint earthy scent after rain. Nested between those shimmering patches of grass, Ash sat on a wooden bench in the Class 1's dormitory garden. His eyes, however, were not on the moonlit scenery but on Little White, who was gleefully chasing after a small glowing bug that darted in the air, sometimes dipping low to the ground before shooting back up. Why did she say that? Ash felt a faint trace of anger still lingering inside him. Alicia should not have brought up something so sensitive, not in that way. But more than the anger, There was confusion gnawing at him. Why did I react that way? He did not understand it. The moment her question reached his ears, something inside him flared. An unexplainable heat, sharp and intense. Before he realized it, his body had already acted, moving him away from her. I thought I had complete control over my emotions. Damn, I guess it's still too soon to claim that. With a quiet sigh, Ash rubbed his face with both hands, as if trying to clear his thoughts. For now, he didn't want to think about Alicia. He needed to shift his focus elsewhere, and so his mind turned to what he should do next, whether to head for the next rune or handle other matters first. There are 3 more runes here, on this planet, and my theory about the ancient civilization being involved feels more and more correct. Otherwise, it makes no sense that 10 of the 20 runes would be here, even if I leave out the 5 hidden ones. Currently, Ash had 7 runes in his possession. Counting the hidden one he had absorbed, that made 8, leaving 3 more that he already knew the locations of. 1 is in the neutral continent, 1 lies deep in the ocean, and 1 rests in the continent of the dwarves. Which one should I go for first? He murmured under his breath, his voice barely louder than the rustling of wet leaves in the breeze. The rune hidden within the ocean was without question the hardest to obtain. Not only was it in one of the most dangerous and inaccessible locations, but the journey itself would cost time, effort, and perhaps even countless lives. That would have been the case if he didn't have the rune of death and the rune of concealment, both of which tilted the odds in his favor. Even so, I'll leave that one for last. His focus shifted to the rune in the neutral continent. Right? Thinking about that one, I guess I should first test something. Maybe I can create a skill using the rune of knowledge to reveal a rune's true name. If that works, it might make things a lot easier. The cool silver light of the moon washed over him as he leaned back against the bench, mind already sinking into thought. Let's try. But before he could enter his soul space, a voice called out to him from behind. You are here. Ash's body went still for a moment upon hearing it. Why are you here? He asked quietly, his head lowered, his voice calm yet carrying an edge of weariness. Why can't I be here? Alicia replied, taking a few steps forward before sitting down beside him on the bench, her eyes lifting to the moon that hung above the dormitory garden. The silver light fell across her features, giving her expression an unreadable softness. I am not in the mood to talk right now, Ash muttered, his gaze fixed ahead. Fine, stay silent then. I'm here to play with my snow, not to talk with you. Humph, she said with a little huff, reaching forward to pick up Little White, who was in the middle of eating the glowing bug it had caught. She held the tiny serpent close to her, pressing her cheek against his smooth, cool scales. However, Little White's blue eyes narrowed slightly, a faint glimmer of hostility flashing within them, as if he was sensing Ash's emotions and reacting to them. Seeing that expression, Alicia tilted her head and then looked back at Ash, her tone softer this time.
I'm sorry. All right.
I said something I should not have. Forgive me, will you? There was a faint bitterness in her voice, and beneath it, a note of sadness. Ash stayed quiet, listening to her steady, almost drum-like rhythm of her loud heartbeat. Your words were wrong, Nancy. Ash finally spoke, turning his gaze to meet hers. His eyes, although not cold, lacked any warmth. You can't go around saying things like that. I'm sorry. Alicia lowered her head further, her voice sounding genuinely remorseful this time. Ash kept his eyes on her for a while longer before letting out a slow sigh. Fine, just don't say something like that again. All right? He said, gently patting her head before pulling her into a firm embrace. Little White, caught between the two of them, wriggled impatiently until he managed to slip out, coiling himself around Ash's neck and rubbing his head lightly against Ash's jaw.
Mama. Mama. Mama.
Hearing the voice echo within his mind, Ash smiled faintly.
Sorry. Sorry.
Don't get angry. We will give you a name now. Despite having been born only today, Little White's intelligence was already far beyond what Ash had seen in other creatures. The serpent could understand everything Ash said and even communicate back. For now, It seemed his vocabulary in this mental voice was limited to the single word mama. Yet Ash could clearly feel the different meanings hidden in the tone and intent each time it was spoken. And right now, that word carried a clear complaint. The little serpent was annoyed that, instead of deciding on his name, Ash and Alicia were simply hugging and talking. He also wanted to be included in their attention.
Goo.
Still holding Alicia close, Ash asked, "Did you say the name Snow for Little White?" "Yeah," she answered, her lips curving into a small smile. "Isn't it lovely? It matches his color perfectly." "I see. I was thinking of using the name Medusa," Ash said thoughtfully. "Yuck. Don't you dare give such a monstrous name to my little white." Alicia protested instantly, pulling the serpent from Ash's neck. This time, little white turned his blue eyes toward Ash, and the look was undeniably hostile. "See? Even Snow doesn't like that name. Heed my words. Snow is the best, isn't it?" she said, looking directly at the serpent. And to Ash's surprise, little white gave a small, deliberate nod, his tongue flicking out as though in agreement. "Haha.
Fine, I guess, Ash mattered.
No matter how I look at it, your naming sense is just as horrible as it was before. Isn't it, Ash?" Alicia teased, her voice laced with amusement. "It's not that bad," Ash replied under his breath. "Mama, even you think it's bad? Why are you siding with her?" "Ha ha. Hee hee."
Mama.
Their soft laughter mingled with the faint hiss of the serpent, the tension from earlier slowly melting away under the quiet moonlit night. The garden was peaceful again, the air carrying the fresh scent of damp grass, and for a moment, the three of them simply existed together under the silver glow, bound by a strange yet undeniable warmth. "Good night, Nancy." "Good night, Ash." Standing in front of Alicia's room, Ash looked at her, wondering why she was still gazing at him. "What are you looking at? Want to come inside?" "I don't mind." A teasing smirk appeared on her lips as she leaned slightly on the doorframe, but Ash's face flushed instantly. He quickly turned away, almost fleeing as he walked down the hall. "And no, it's fine. Good night, see you tomorrow." Alicia remained at the doorway, her eyes following him as his back grew smaller with each step. The teasing smirk faded, replaced by a soft and almost dreamy expression. "I wasn't teasing you, Ash. I really wouldn't mind if you came inside. But knowing you, you'd never do it. Sigh. Why are you so lovely, Ash, why?" A bold thought flickered in her mind, quick and dangerous. Should I be forceful with him? No, what am I thinking? She shook her head quickly, dismissing the strange idea, and shut her door as if sealing the thought away. Meanwhile, Ash walked toward the boys' section, still feeling the heat on his cheeks. Damn it, she's gotten quite bold lately. The Class 1S dormitory for boys and girls was connected by a single passage, though an academy staff member always kept watch to prevent unnecessary visits. With absolute concealment active, Ash slipped past without trouble. Of course, he could use this ability to spend more time with Alicia whenever he wanted. But he believed that even though they loved each other deeply, both needed time to grow stronger on their own. They could only support each other from the side without interfering too much in each other's paths. As he approached the exit of the girls' section, a sudden movement from Snow caught his attention. The little serpent was staring fixedly at a particular door. Ash followed its gaze and read the nameplate. "Malicia?" His brow furrowed. Why would Snow be looking at her door? Before he could think too deeply about it, his vision suddenly wavered. A strange sensation flooded him, as if his sight was being pulled elsewhere. The experience was far from pleasant. A dizzying shift gripped his senses before his vision cleared again. Except now, everything looked different. What is this? What happened to my eyes? He glanced around, but nothing in his surroundings had changed. Yet the way he saw them was entirely different. Confusion flickered in his thoughts until a realization began to form. Don't tell me, is Snow sharing its vision with me now? The moment he realized it, everything made sense. This wasn't his sight at all, it was Snow's. It was an ability that could open countless possibilities, a powerful tool in the right situation, and ideas began flashing through his mind like sparks. But right now, all those thoughts were pushed aside, because what he was seeing through Snow was far more urgent. From this shared vision, he could see inside Melicia's room. Everything was tinted in shades of gray and red, almost like an infrared camera's live feed. The room was a disaster. Shattered furniture lay scattered across the floor, glass fragments littered every corner, and it looked as though a violent storm had torn through. In the middle of it all sat Melicia, her posture slumped, shoulders trembling faintly. She was crying. Ash's brows drew together. Now, what happened to her? Did something happen in her family? A flicker of genuine concern stirred in him, but uncertainty weighed on his thoughts. It didn't feel right to just barge into her room without permission, yet it also felt wrong to simply turn away and pretend he hadn't seen anything. And another thing lingered in the back of his mind. His involvement might create something more troublesome in the future. Damn it. Should I go myself, or send someone else? Chapter 214, Dream Manipulation. Ash stood still for a while, weighing his options in silence. The faint night breeze rustled the leaves above him, carrying with it the cool scent of damp grass from the academy gardens. His eyes lingered on the dimly lit windows of the girls' dormitory, one of them belonging to Melicia's room. In his mind, he kept running through the same problem again and again. If he sent someone else, what would he even tell them? That he just happened to know something was wrong? If he said he could see through the walls, people would look at him as nothing more than a creep. And that was the last kind of reputation he wanted. Besides, there was still the shock of Snow's sudden ability lingering in the back of his mind. Not everything is mentioned in the status window. Looks like there are things I'll only discover after experiencing them firsthand. Even so, that didn't erase the question pressing in his mind. Should I really be here? He now found himself back in the garden again, the moonlight spilling over the wet grass, casting silver shadows beneath his feet. For the teleport to work, he needed a clear and direct view inside Melicia's room. But the vision Snow had shown him earlier wasn't enough to lock onto the location with certainty. His eyes narrowed slightly as he considered his options. He wasn't exactly confident about this. The truth was, Ash had never been good at comforting people, nor was he any better at dealing with someone crying. Situations like that felt far more suffocating to him than facing dangerous enemies in battle. I'd rather fight angels than deal with something like this, but alas, my luck has never been that good. He sighed, lamenting his own fate and even cursing it quietly under his breath a few times, as if that might somehow make this task easier. After a moment of stillness, he muttered in a low voice, almost as though trying to convince himself, "Well, a man's gotta do what a man's gotta do." And with those words, Ash vanished from sight. Appearing inside Melicia's room, Ash stood still and watched her quietly. He had absolute concealment activated, so there was no way she could sense him. Not that her condition seemed good enough for her to sense anyone right now. The air in the room was heavy and stale, carrying the faint smell of dust and something metallic, blood, perhaps. Every piece of furniture was broken or overturned. Glass shards littered the floor, and the bed frame was splintered. It looked less like a room and more like a battlefield. Sobi, Sobi, Sobi. Looking at the pitiful figure of Melicia curled up among the wreckage, Ash's mind went back to the moment when he first met her. Right? I decided I would take revenge on her. But looking at her like this, should I cancel it? She reminds me of my past self. Didn't I also used to cry like this? With a quiet sigh, he released his concealment. Even after that, she still didn't react to his presence. Damn it, Melicia. The moment his voice reached her ears, she jolted as if struck by lightning and stood up in shock. That was when Ash got a full look at her face, and his expression hardened. There were deep, dark circles under her swollen red eyes, and her pale complexion made her look almost sickly. Her cheeks were hollow, her hair was an unkempt mess, and her clothes were crumpled, stained with dried tears and snot. She looked thinner than before, fragile, like she might crumble if touched. Why the heck does she look like this? What happened to her? Before he could say anything, her lips trembled, and she muttered, voice low and unstable. Am I starting to hallucinate now? Is my mind playing tricks on me? Her confused expression twisted into something pained. Then suddenly, she stepped forward and began hitting him, her voice breaking into hoarse screams. Why the hell are you not leaving me alone? Go away. Go away. Go away. Damn it. Damn you. Damn Alicia. Damn you all. Don't come into my mind. I'm sick of you. Bam. 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 Why are you not leaving my mind? You love Alicia, right? Then go to her. Damn it. Leave me alone. Don't make me any more miserable than I already am. Her voice was trembling, yet every word carried the weight of raw pain. Why? What did I do wrong? I just loved you. Was that a crime? But no, you love someone else. Why? Why always me? Why? She kept hitting him, both fists striking his chest with every bit of strength her frail body could muster. But Ash didn't move, didn't block her blows, didn't push her away. He just stood there in silence, his face shadowed, his eyes unreadable. Eventually, her exhausted body could no longer keep up with the outburst. After a week without rest, her strength finally gave out, and she slumped forward, unconscious. Ash caught her before she could fall, holding her gently in his arms. For a long while, his mind was completely blank. I am the reason she's like this. The thought pressed down on his chest, making it feel heavy. It was the first time since losing Alicia that he had felt something this suffocating. He didn't know why, but he could relate to Milicia, because after Nancy died, he had been just as miserable as her, maybe even more. And yet, knowing now that the cause of her current state was him all along, I'm glad she mistook me for an illusion, because if she realized it was me, I don't even know how she would react. I can't even imagine. Looking at Milicia's unconscious face in his arms, Ash let out a faint sigh, his voice low and weary. Love sure is troublesome. Life mana infusion. Ash infused life mana into Milicia's body, the soft green light wrapping around her frail form as she continued lying motionless on the cold floor. Slowly, her pale complexion began to improve, the sickly gray tone fading bit by bit until a faint trace of warmth returned to her cheeks. Her breathing, which had been shallow and uneven, steadied slightly under the gentle flow of energy. Once the life mana had done its work, Ash summoned a small glass vial into his hand. The liquid inside was a deep, glimmering red, swirling faintly as if alive. It was a hunger nullification potion. Once consumed, it could supply the body with enough nutrients to survive for an entire week without food. Supporting her head with one arm, Ash carefully pressed the vial to her lips, letting the potion flow into her mouth in slow, measured sips so she wouldn't choke. He had no way of knowing exactly how long she had gone without eating, but judging by her weakened state, it could have been days, perhaps even longer. At the very least, this would keep her body from deteriorating further. Placing a pillow beneath her head to keep her comfortable, Ash rose and glanced around the room. It was a complete disaster. Broken furniture, shattered glass, splintered wood scattered across the floor. Instinctively, his hand moved to start cleaning, but he stopped mid-motion. Wait, if I clean the room, she'll know someone came inside. I can't clean it. Instead, he searched for something that was still intact. After a bit of looking, he spotted a lone chair in the corner, somehow spared from the destruction. It was covered in dust and leaning slightly to one side, but it would do. Dragging it over near the window, Ash sat down, keeping his eyes on Milicia's unconscious form. Now, what should I do? The truth was, every part of him wanted to just leave, to walk away and pretend he hadn't seen anything. But he couldn't unsee what was already burned into his mind. Leaving now wouldn't mean staying out of someone else's business. It would be nothing but running away from a problem that stood right in front of him. And this problem was tied to him and him alone. That meant, whether he liked it or not, he bore some responsibility. I wish I never saw her like this. At least then I wouldn't be here. he muttered under his breath, the words laced with a selfishness he didn't bother denying. I'll consider my revenge taken, I guess. His gaze drifted to Snow, who was lazily moving along his shoulders and arms, occasionally coiling around his wrist as if inspecting every inch of him. The small serpent's unhurried movements were strangely calming, but Ash knew it wasn't simply idling. Snow seemed to be studying him, or maybe even sensing his mood. Buddy, you made me see this mess. Now you've got to help fix it. Do something, will you? The thought was purely sarcastic, but Ash had no idea his words might actually end up setting something unexpected in motion. Snow looked at Ash after hearing his words. The little serpent tilted its head slightly, as if thinking seriously about something, then gave a small nod as though it had reached a decision. Without wasting a moment, it slid off Ash's shoulder, its smooth scales brushing lightly against his arm, and moved toward Melicia's still figure on the floor. Ash was taken aback at the unexpected nod. Does he really have some way? Snow reached her and slowly lowered its head until its small forehead gently touched hers. A faint, soft violet glow began to shine from the center of its head, the light spreading out in slow, calming pulses. For a few minutes, the glow remained, bathing Melicia's pale face in an otherworldly light, before it finally faded away into nothing. When the glow disappeared, Snow looked noticeably tired. Its small body seemed heavier, movements slower, as if its energy had been drained. Ash guessed the reason instantly and extended his hand toward the serpent. Snow did not hesitate at all. In the next moment, it coiled lightly around his arm, pressing its tiny fangs into his skin. Ah, curses. I can't get used to this feeling. His body weakened almost instantly, the strength leaving his limbs as if his life was being drawn out of him. For a brief moment, he felt like an old man whose time had nearly run out. But within seconds, the feeling passed, his body regaining its usual vigor. Snow, now looking lively again, uncoiled from his arm, moving with renewed energy. Hey, buddy, what did you just do?
Mama.
You did what?
Mama.
Really?
Mama.
Curse it all. Is there something you can't do? Dream manipulation, really? Ash was genuinely shocked because now he understood. Snow had used its ability to alter Melicia's dream. In her unconscious state, she was now dreaming that everything which had happened just now, her attacking him, was all simply a dream. The thought came to him almost immediately. Why can't I just make her think that all her feelings for me were a dream too? But, Mama. Snow shook its head firmly, and even though it only spoke one word, Ash understood. It was saying it couldn't do that. Its ability wasn't that powerful. Could only make a person dream, nothing more. At least not yet. Ash sat back slightly, thinking. Just then, another idea formed in his mind. Yeah, that could work. Could also distract her away from me. And didn't she become much more emotionally strong after that in the novel? A slow smile appeared on his face, the kind that came when a troublesome plan formed perfectly in his mind. Without wasting more time, he transmitted instructions to Snow. Chapter 215, King of Crimson Skies. Melicia's past. Wah! Wah! Congratulations, Mrs. Ravencroft. It's a girl. The doctor in charge of the delivery gave the good news to the baby's mother. Samantha Ravencroft looked perfectly fine even after giving birth, her breathing steady, her posture relaxed, one of the many benefits of being awakened. She had a beautiful and mature face, her silky black hair slightly damp but still shining under the light, and a smile that could make any man fall for her. But no one would dare to fall for her. After all, her husband was a saint. The smile she wore now, however, was not her usual confident one. It was different, softer, warmer. The smile of a mother who had waited months just to hold her child in her arms. Taking the baby carefully with trembling hands, she looked at her tiny daughter, her eyes filling with a deep, indescribable emotion. My baby. While Samantha was still admiring her newborn, the door to the room opened slowly. Lucan Ravencroft stepped inside. His tall, athletic frame carried an air of power, his fiery red hair messy as if he had rushed here, and his face was filled with a rare mix of emotions. Genuine happiness, excitement, disbelief, and awe all at once. Laughing softly, Samantha said warmly, "You didn't open the door with a bang this time. Looks like you were being careful not to wake the baby." But Lucan didn't reply. His gaze was fixed entirely on the small figure in her arms. Slowly, he reached out his hands, and Samantha smiled as she passed Melissia to him without hesitation. The moment Lucan held the baby, boom! The air trembled as flames erupted out of nowhere, filling the room in an instant. The fire surged wildly, threatening to consume everything, but Lucan reacted immediately. With precise control, he stopped the flames from spreading beyond the room and shielded Samantha completely. "Take this." Both Lucan and Samantha stared at Melissia's tiny sleeping form. She was still fast asleep, but her body was wrapped in an aura of crimson fire. The shock on Lucan's face lasted only a second before it broke into a wide grin. Then, a deep laugh rumbled from his chest. "Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! Finally, ancestors, our legacy can be revived again. Ha 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 ha." 5 years later. "Daddy, what is that?" A young Melissia stood at the edge of a dimly lit underground chamber, her bright eyes fixed on the strange blue and red flame suspended in midair. It burned in complete silence, contained within a crystal-like barrier, and yet it seemed to pulse faintly, as though aware of their presence. Lucan knelt beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder, his voice filled with pride. "This is our family's legacy. You will inherit it when you grow up, my child. The most potent bloodline of our family runs through your veins." "Bloodline? What's that? Can we eat it?" she asked innocently, tilting her head in thought. Lucan chuckled, shaking his head. "No, you can't eat it. Then it's not fun." Melissia puffed her cheeks in a pout. "My child, don't say that. You like birds, don't you?" "Yeah, they're cool." "Then, my little princess, you will have to inherit this flame and unlock the full potential of our bloodline. It is the duty of every head of the family to try. But until now, other than the second and third heads, no one has succeeded. Not even me." "Huh? But Daddy, I learned counting starts from 1. Where's 1 if you said 2 and 3? "Oh, that. The progenitor of our bloodline, the first head, was the one who gave us this legacy. How could I dare to count him, silly girl?" "Oh, yes, so you will have to grow strong, kiddo, and inherit this legacy in my stead. Revive our bloodline." "But Daddy, which bloodline do we have?" Lucan's smile deepened, his eyes shining with pride. "King of Crimson Skies." The name alone carried the weight of an ancient legend, one spoken of in hushed tones by historians and sung about in half-forgotten ballads. It was said that the King of Crimson Skies once ruled the heavens with wings of blazing fire, each beat of those colossal wings capable of setting the clouds aflame. His cry could split storms apart, his shadow could eclipse the sun, and his flames could burn for eternity without ever fading. A ruler unmatched, a sovereign of the boundless blue above, feared by gods, revered by mortals. To see him soar was to witness the wrath and beauty of the skies themselves. A legend, and the blood of that legend, though thinned by time, flowed through Melissia's veins. Present. The plan Ash thought was nothing that drastic. He was just going to do something that would set certain events into motion earlier than they were supposed to happen. Especially in the case of Melissia right now. I will just have to make her inherit the eternal flames. Yes, the blood that ran thick in the veins of the Ravencroft family was the blood of one of the mythical beasts thought to have vanished from the world long ago, the blood of a phoenix. And this was also something Ash had once considered using against Melissia and Naira when they had caught him just before entering the academy. But he didn't go through with it back then. After all, it was one of the most heavily guarded secrets of their lineage, a truth that could get him dragged into more trouble than he was willing to handle. According to the novel, Melissia only attempted to inherit the flame much later, driven by her desire to gain the strength needed to follow Rey. She came close, so close to succeeding, But in the end, the eternal flames rejected her. If the blood running in their veins had been pure, they could have birthed their own eternal flames. But history told a different story. The king of eternal flame, the last true phoenix, had fallen in love with a human woman. That union gave rise to the Ravencroft family, but also diluted the once perfect bloodline. Their history stretched back so far that the earliest records spoke of them as sky sovereigns. Yet after the time of the second and third heads of the family, no one had ever managed to unlock the bloodline's full potential. They were missing something, a key component without which the flame would never truly awaken. And the same was true for Malicia. Ash, however, knew exactly what that missing key was. From what he remembered, the third head of the Ravencroft family had lost it in battle against a powerful enemy, and ever since, the bloodline's true awakening had been impossible. That missing piece was none other than the holy relic of the Phoenix clan, an artifact once carried by the King of Crimson Skies himself. If everything went as he planned, Ash would set things right for Malicia and perhaps even for the Ravencroft family as a whole. In the novel, the relic's location had been discovered by Ray, who had then gifted it to Malicia. But the storyline has already been thrown into chaos. Ash had no illusions that such events would unfold naturally now. I need to correct what I deviated. The things Ray was meant to set into motion, I have to do myself now. That was his simple plan, to show Malicia the location of that final missing piece. By doing so, he could turn her attention toward something that truly mattered to her, because her goal had always been to grow stronger and revive her bloodline. It was the most Ash could help with, perhaps the only real way to give her a path forward without directly interfering too much in her life. Ethan POV. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? Ethan paced around his room, his footsteps quick and restless, the same words echoing over and over in his mind like a chant he could not silence. His mind and heart were in conflict, pulling him in opposite directions. His heart whispered in a sharp, poisonous tone to get rid of Ash, to make him disappear forever. Assassination, that was something his family had always specialized in. If he asked, they would handle it swiftly and silently, leaving nothing behind but the result he wanted. But his mind was not so sure. His mind was gripped by a cold, deep fear. He feared Ash. It was not only because Ash had power, it was also the way he carried himself, that casual and almost indifferent air, as if nothing in the world could shake him. The way he had defeated Ray. It was not just a fight. It was a moment that had sent quiet ripples through the academy. Ripples Ash himself might never even realize existed. Logic told him to stay far away. Ash's feelings were clearly for Alicia, not Malicia, and normally that should have been enough to keep Ethan calm. But Ethan knew the truth that mattered most to him. Malicia liked Ash. That one fact poisoned every thought he had. He stopped pacing, gripping his own hair in frustration. What should he do? Remove Ash completely? Or give up on the girl he loved? Could he really throw away years of feelings, the dreams he had built in his heart? No, I love her. How can I watch someone else be with her? I have imagined our future too many times. How can I let those dreams shatter before my eyes? My heart would not survive it. He tried to recall his father's lessons. Stay calm. Always observe. Analyze your opponent. Strike only when the time is right. An assassin must be patient. But his patience was slipping away like water through cupped hands. Damn it. I will just tell father about this. I will tell him Malicia has feelings for another boy. Even if Ash is powerful, he has no backing, no real protection. He cannot stand against my father. Can he? His breathing slowed, but his expression grew darker. A strange mix of hesitation and determination curling on his face. Do not blame me too much, Ashburn. It is not my fault. I waited. I truly did wait for things to return to how they were. But you are standing in the way of my dreams. I have no choice but to remove you. I cannot let anyone come between my feelings. Even if you do not feel the same for Malicia. Chapter 216. Frequency Distortion. What did you say? Nicole's deep voice echoed inside the principal's office, carrying a weight that made the air feel heavier. The mana frequency of the whole continent is getting distorted. It's not much, only around 0.1% in the last week. But I have a bad feeling about it. You know very well what happens when the Gatewatch detects even the slightest change in mana frequency. A somber mood enveloped the entire room as Mark, the Human Association leader, spoke through the communication crystal. His words were not the kind that could be taken lightly. Is it something related to the demons? Nicole asked, his mouth hidden behind his intertwined fingers, eyes narrowed in thought. Demons? I don't know for sure, but our suspicions lean toward that possibility as well. I contacted the other continents, and nothing like this is happening there, except in the neutral and dragon continents. But you already know those are lawless zones where anything can happen. Mark glanced away for a moment, his expression tightening as if someone had called for him. I'll talk to you later. I've already informed the other 5. Ask Master about it, whether this is a good sign or a bad one. Though personally, I've already started preparing under the assumption that it's bad. All right, I'll ask. Nicole gave a slow nod, and as soon as the words left his lips, the call was cut. Silence settled over the office. Nicole leaned back in his chair, his thoughts swirling. Although it's only 0.1% distortion, it can rise to 100% in the blink of an eye. And this disruption didn't occur in one small region. The spread across the entire human continent. Is this going to be a knock? Before the thought could even complete itself, a sharp knock on the door pulled him back. His mana perception spread instinctively, confirming who was outside. Come in. The door opened and a familiar voice spoke, polite yet casual. I hope you are doing well, Saint Principal. Nicole sighed. Just call me one thing, either Saint or Principal. And since you are a student, it's better to call me Sir. Ah, yes sir, certainly. Nicole already had a hand pressed against his forehead, as though anticipating trouble. So what are you doing here? Don't you have classes to attend? You already have far too many absences. Are you not attending lessons again, Ashburn? Ash smiled with the innocent look of a 15-year-old who knew he was about to cause trouble. Sir, that's actually what I came here to talk about. The thing is, he began explaining how his presence in class had become a distraction. Not for everyone, but enough that most students either kept talking about him or staring at him, and even some teachers seemed affected. Because of that, he had been avoiding attending any lessons. So, what I want is your permission to still take the exams even if I'm not attending classes. To make up for the study part, could you give me some sort of special privilege? Something that allows me to ask anyone in the academy for guidance. Originally, Ash had been about to ask much more directly for what he wanted, but the dark look forming on Nicole's face made him soften his tone at the last moment. Is that possible? Why should I give you a privilege such as this? Give me one single reason to grant it to you. Even though Elder believes you are some sort of hope, to me you are still just a kid. It makes no sense to give you such a privilege. Does that mean there really is a privilege like this? Nice. Then I was just testing my luck. Ash smiled cheerfully, as if genuinely delighted by the discovery. Of course, he was lying. He already knew such a thing existed. After all, Ray had been granted it in the novel, though that was in his 3rd year, not in the first like Ash was attempting now. Nicole's lips twitched slightly as he heard Ash speak. Why do I feel irritated when he acts like this? That rude attitude of his was much better. Right now it feels like I'm getting scammed or something. So, sir, what do I have to do to gain a privilege like this? And don't tell me to do something too drastic, because I honestly wouldn't care even if you expelled me from the academy. I am only attending the academy for a single reason. Alicia. Alicia. Both of them spoke and thought the name at the same time. Hearing that, Nicole's irritation deepened, his voice lowering as he asked, Are you trying to imply there is nothing you can learn here in this academy? Or that there is nothing worth learning here? No, sir. Don't take it this seriously. There is no end to knowledge, as knowledge itself is endless. There is always more to learn, and I know I can gain much in the academy. Isn't that why I am asking for such a privilege? so that I can maximize my growth by learning from everyone here. He paused briefly before adding with a faint smile. And the reason I said I wouldn't care if you expelled me is because the academy is not the only source for learning. I can always try other places. Although Ash was trying to act like a normal student, his tone carried a quiet confidence that didn't quite match his age. His true nature was starting to show through. And what are those sources? Nicole's voice was cold now. Who knows? Ash tilted his head slightly, lowering it just enough to hide the smirk that tugged at his lips. The air between them grew heavy, as though the very room was holding its breath. Nicole looked at Ash with a sharp gaze, as if restraining the urge to put him in his place. Master said we should help Ash as much as we can. I would have given him that privilege after making him run a few dungeons. But now I feel like dungeons will be too easy for him. Yes, let me give him something more challenging. Something that will also serve as an experience. I can give you what you want, but you will have to run an errand for me. You have already traveled to the Elven continent, so I want you to go to the land of Forge and deliver an item there. It is something important, something the dwarves want. Nicole paused for a moment before adding, his tone almost too casual. The land of Forge isn't like the Elven continent. The dwarves value strength and craftsmanship above all. But they are also difficult. Outsiders aren't always welcome. Their land is deep in the mountains, the air thick with molten heat, and the only laws that matter there are the ones they make. If they suspect you of disrespect, even a guest can vanish without anyone asking questions. Even if you are going there for delivery, you have to be careful. And there might also be many dangers along the way. So, can you do it? Ash's smile faltered slightly in his bowing position, but only for a heartbeat before it returned. Looking up, he said, "Of course I can. Just leave it to me. It's good that I was already planning to go there, but why do I feel uneasy that things are going my way? Does this mean something is about to happen?" Although the thought of collecting the rune along the way was a relief, the fact that events seemed to be aligning so perfectly made him wary. Nicole had called it an errand, but in Ash's experience, jobs that sounded simple were usually the ones that turned into a storm. Leaving the principal's office, Ash made his way towards the training grounds, his steps steady but his mind already wandering ahead. He was going there to inform Alicia about his upcoming departure. Though what will be her reaction, Ash didn't know. The afternoon air was calm, but before he could take more than a few steps out of the building, a small white serpent suddenly appeared in a shimmer of light, teleporting straight onto his shoulder. It coiled itself comfortably around his neck, its tiny, cool scales brushing against his skin.
Mama.
Yeah, we're going on a trip, Ash replied casually. Though there will be nothing but mountains, fire, and some crazy dwarves. The thought brought a faint, dry smile to his lips. As he walked, his mind shifted to Milicia. I've already shown her the location through the dream, and she did look a little more spirited this morning. So I think she'll be fine. It wasn't a decision he had made lightly. Ash had already thought it through before giving her the location of the holy artifact. He wasn't worried that Milicia would harm him or Alicia. In the novel, after she inherited the eternal flames and unlocked the true depth of her bloodline, her entire personality underwent a transformation. That unshakable sense of justice she already possessed became something absolute. It was as if her very soul was reforged. The eternal flames had a nature of their own. They burned away all shadows of hatred and despair, leaving only clarity and light in the heart of a phoenix. Perhaps that was the real reason Ash had set the wheels in motion so early. Maybe he simply didn't want anyone to cry because of him. And even if someone did, as long as he never knew about it, he could live with it. But once she inherited the flames, she would overcome her shattered self and rise again, reborn in fire. Yeah, I did what I should. I can't do much more now. I already have too much on my plate.
Chapter 217, Guerrier's absence.
Why is there no one here? Ash thought as he looked around inside the rundown forge. The place felt lifeless. There were no weapons displayed, no tools lying on the workbenches, and everything was in disarray, as though someone had left in a hurry without even bothering to lock the door. Dust clung faintly to the shelves, and the faint smell of burnt metal still lingered in the air, making the silence feel even heavier. He was currently standing inside Gary's forge, the very place where his soul sword had been made. Ash had come here thinking of asking Gary to make a few more things for him, since they already knew each other. But when he arrived, there was no sign of the old blacksmith. Sigh. Looks like I'll have to ask those dwarfs to make my things instead. To be honest, Ash really didn't want to ask a dwarf for anything. First of all, dwarves were hard to deal with. Once they got to know you, they were overly friendly, loud, and heavy drinkers. And their laughter, damn. Just thinking about it gives me chills. Ash never drank alcohol, and he was not the kind to suddenly become overly friendly with strangers. So dealing with them was going to be troublesome for him. And that was only if they considered him a friend. If they didn't, then things became dangerous. Dwarves were more united than any other race. If even one of them was wronged, the entire race would take up their hammers and march to split the skull of the offender. Even if it meant their entire race would get wiped out in the process. They were a stubborn and tenacious bunch. And the main thing, they hated beautiful people. Yes, that was one of the reasons Ash had come here. He wanted to get something that could suppress his charm. Otherwise, he would have to hide his face all the time, and that would only make him look suspicious. Closing the forge door behind him, Ash stepped out into the streets. The sun was dipping lower, casting a soft orange glow across the slum streets. He ran a hand through his hair, already thinking ahead. If Gary wasn't around, then there was no point wasting more time here. The sooner he left for the Dwarven lands, the sooner he could get what he needed, and maybe deal with a few other matters along the way. The thought carried him straight toward the teleportation point in the city. Of course, it wasn't possible to teleport directly into the Dwarven stronghold, but he could travel to the far northern edge of the human continent. From there, he could use Transcendent Step to reach their lands. Technically, he could have used Transcendent Step from here and traveled instantly, but the mana consumption for such a distance would be ridiculous. And why waste his strength when there was a perfectly good facility available? He already had plenty of money. If not now, then when would he spend it? As he moved closer to the teleportation district, the air grew louder, richer with scents and sounds. It wasn't long before the bustling heart of the market surrounded him. The smell of roasted meat, freshly baked bread, and exotic spices mixed with the metallic tang of enchanted trinkets being sold at nearby stalls. Merchants called out their wares with practiced enthusiasm, haggling voices rising and falling in waves. Among the crowd, Ash saw couples walking hand in hand, their faces lit up with warmth and laughter, as if nothing in the world could trouble them. And, almost naturally, his thoughts wandered to Alicia. Before coming here, when he had informed her about his departure, her reaction had been a little surprising. "You are leaving on an errand? And it's a task given by the principal through which you can get privileges?" Alicia asked, or perhaps muttered, though her eyes seemed a little vacant, as if her mind was drifting somewhere far away. "Yes." The words hung between them as they walked slowly down the academy's stone pathways. The rain had stopped not long ago, and the ground still glistened under the soft light breaking through the clouds. Every step they took sent a faint echo through the damp air, and the scent of wet stone and earth lingered around them. It was the kind of weather that made the world feel quieter, softer. Yet Ash felt a faint weight in his chest, a quiet worry he couldn't quite hide. He had prepared himself for pushback, for an argument maybe, but her reaction was calmer than he had expected. Almost too calm. "When will you return?" 1 week minimum. "Will you be able to talk with me?" "Yeah. If we use a communication artifact, it's possible." "Then I am fine with it." She stopped and turned toward him, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. Her voice was soft but firm as she said, "Just be safe, and return. Keep him. Don't let him go. Bind him. He will leave you alone. Don't let him go." The intrusive whisper in her mind clawed at her thoughts, but she pushed it away with practiced will, forcing her lips into a warm smile. "And don't forget to bring me something as a souvenir from there. I would prefer if it was a blade. You are going to the land of Forge after all." Ash's smile brightened, a spark of mischief in his eyes as he puffed out his chest in mock pride. I was already planning to get one, even if you didn't tell me to. A small chuckle escaped her lips as she turned and walked ahead of him. Now go before I change my mind. I also need to get strong. Before she could finish, Ash was suddenly appeared in front of her, wrapping his arms around her in a firm embrace. For a brief second, Alicia froze, then her hands slowly came up to return the hug. His warmth seeped into her, but at the same time, it stirred a deep ache inside her chest. Tears gathered at the corners of her eyes, threatening to fall. I will get strong. I need to get strong so that you can take me with you on your travels. I will get stronger. I need to get strong. Don't let Ash go. He will not return. You know how he is. Don't let him go. Shut up. Don't mess with my mind. Before her thoughts could spiral again, Ash's quiet voice brushed against her ears, low enough that it felt like it was meant only for her. Don't worry about me. I'll tell you a secret. I can't die even if my head or heart is destroyed. So don't worry about me. The moment his words sank in, her skill told her he wasn't lying. That faint, instinctive certainty settled deep inside her, and with it came an almost dizzying sense of relief. The heavy weight she had been carrying in silence seemed to lift from her heart, her shoulders loosening as if a knot she didn't know existed had finally been untied. She didn't ask how. She didn't ask why. She didn't even let greed or curiosity flicker in her mind. None of that mattered. She was simply happy. Happy that Ash was safe. Happy that she could believe he would return to her. Her hands tightened slightly around his back, holding him as if to anchor the warmth she felt in that moment. Of course, Ash had not told her everything. What he said was true. He could not die through physical means. But if someone were to strike at his very soul, that was another matter entirely. Reaching the teleportation checkpoint, Ash paid the money and waited for his turn. The teleportation point was nothing grand or overly mystical at first glance. Rather, it felt almost like an airport waiting area back on Earth. Rows of benches were filled with travelers, some quietly talking, some staring at the floor in thought, while others looked half asleep. When your name was called, you were expected to step onto the rune-carved circle on the floor, and the teleportation process would begin. The array functioned on the theory of space folding, a subject Ash had already studied in depth. Speaking of theories, he was never wasting his free time. Whenever he had even a moment outside his daily activities, he would enter his soul space and bury himself in books. Intricate magical theories, practical spellcraft, and even highly experimental ideas that most people would dismiss as impossible. Since time in his soul space flowed differently, he had already finished most of the books available in Starlight Academy's library, and even reread a few that had caught his attention. Now, as he sat waiting for his turn, his mind wandered between thoughts of what kinds of spells he could create in the future and what combinations he might need for situations yet to come. His chain of thought was broken when someone called his name. Ash Byrne. He rose and began walking toward the teleportation array. As he made his way through the narrow path between seats, someone in the crowd caught sight of his face. Hey, look, he's so handsome. Oh my God. Is he a celebrity? I didn't even notice before with those clothes on. His face is perfect. The murmur spread quickly, a ripple of attention turning into a small wave of whispers and glances. Ash quickened his steps, lowering his hood so the shadows covered most of his face. He had already chosen his travel attire to avoid this exact situation. A long coat, a wide-brimmed hat, and an overall unremarkable appearance. Snow, the small white serpent, was curled lazily around his neck, fast asleep. The little creature followed him everywhere like a baby duck would follow its mother. Even when Ash went into his soul space, Snow would slither in without needing permission, as though he was simply a natural part of that realm. Stepping onto the teleportation array, Ash felt the magic beneath his feet stir. The runic symbols etched into the stone began to glow faintly at first. Then the violet light grew stronger and stronger, flowing like liquid through each carved line until the entire circle was lit. The air felt heavy for a brief moment, space itself seeming to bend and twist around him. In the next instant, the glow flared and swallowed his figure whole. The world blinked, and Ash was gone, leaving behind only the faint shimmer of fading light where he once stood. Chapter 218 Unease. Well, I am among the mountains again, Ash muttered as his eyes wandered over the vast expanse before him. Endless mountains stretched in every direction, their jagged peaks piercing the clouds and fading into the distant haze, as though the horizon itself had no end. The wind howled between the cliffs, carrying the faint metallic tang of ore and the earthy scent of stone. Somewhere far below, he could hear the distant rumble of water running through hidden rivers inside the rock. Like the elves, whose entire continent was swallowed in forests and roots, the dwarves lived deep beneath the ground. This continent of mountains was their foundation, a land rich with endless veins and rare minerals. But unlike the elven lands, it was not the safest of places. The elves would tirelessly clear their dungeons, knowing that if one were left to break, it could devour entire swaths of their forests. Dwarves, however, had no such sentiment. Though they cleared dungeons when needed, they sometimes left them to fester and break deliberately, letting the chaos spill forth. For them, these outbreaks were not only acceptable but could even serve as a natural defense against invaders. The dwarves were renowned for their unmatched technology, their skill in forging weapons, and their war machines that could level cities. Their territory was fiercely protected. If anything was spotted flying above their lands without permission, it would be shot down instantly, no matter who it was. That was why the skies above the land of Forge were considered a no-flying zone for all outsiders. But right now, with absolute concealment cloaking his presence, Ash appeared in that forbidden sky without a single ripple of disturbance. The air here smells of metal and earth, heavy and sharp. He took a deep breath and began teleporting from one mountain peak to another, searching for a checkpoint. The principal had not given him any map, saying it would help him grow. More like he just wanted me to waste time wandering through the mountains until I stumbled upon the entrance underground. But Ash wasn't about to wander aimlessly. Sharing his vision with Snow, his sight worked like an infrared scan, letting him see the heat of living things. Not far away, he spotted movement at the base of a mountain and began teleporting closer. But the closer he got, the more a strange unease began to gnaw at him. Something is wrong, very wrong. That strange feeling had started the moment he stepped into the land of Forge, but now it was growing heavier, almost pressing against his skin. From above and below, everything seemed normal. The wind was steady, the rocks quiet, and the few monsters roaming the cliffs kept their distance. Yet when he reached the last peak and saw the dwarven guards at the checkpoint, the unease only tightened in his chest. Ash narrowed his eyes, his expression turning cold. What's happening? My instincts tell me there's danger, but I can't see anything. It doesn't make sense. Could there be demons nearby? But my primordial core isn't reacting at all. TCH, this is irritating. He glanced at Snow, still curled around his neck, its tiny body rising and falling with each slow breath. She seemed completely at ease, as if the entire world was harmless. Maybe I'm just being paranoid about how the dwarves will act when they see my face. Yeah, maybe that's it. Even so, he didn't relax. His eyes lingered on the guards, watching for any hint of danger. Finding none, he finally descended, boots touching the hard stone at the base of the mountain. Deactivating his concealment, Ash stepped forward toward the checkpoint. As soon as he had moved a few steps, a loud and rough shout echoed through the mountain air. Who goes there? Looking down toward the source of the voice, Ash saw the short stature barely reaching his waist, a wide and sturdy build with a large belly, and a thick brown beard and hair that were both long and braided, packed inside heavy armor from head to toe. The dwarves looked far from harmless. There was a solid, dangerous presence about them. Within a second, the air turned tense as various crossbows, cannons, and every long-distance weapon present was aimed directly at him. The tension was high. There were exactly 50 dwarves guarding this checkpoint, and the one who had shouted stood firmly at the forefront. Not testing his luck, and still wearing his normal clothes, Ash slowly raised both of his hands in plain view and said in a clear voice, "I am here to deliver an item from Starlight Academy. You must have already received the intel about it." Hearing his words, the small dwarf who had shouted earlier pulled out a radio-like device, speaking in a low mutter to someone on the other end. After a short pause, he looked up again and shouted for all to hear, "He's nae the enemy!" And as soon as those words left his mouth, all the weapons that had been aimed at Ash were lowered. The tension began to fade, although the wary gazes did not. Arriving in front of Ash, the same dwarf, who now revealed a scar running across his left eye, barked in his booming voice, "Give me the item. They are too loud. Don't they have brains? Why is he shouting when I'm standing right in front of him?" But still, Ash replied calmly, "I can't. I was told to deliver the item to St. Colin, the Grandmaster Blacksmith. I can't give it to you, and I have other tasks to take care of as well." The dwarf's face turned red as a ripe tomato after hearing Ash's words. His thick brows twitched, his shoulders tensed, and he started shaking before roaring again. "And who d'ye think ye are? Just do what ye're supposed to. I'll take care of the item. So hand it over to me, damn it." His furious shout sent drops of saliva flying, a few of them landing on Ash's cheek and making him grimace in disgust. "Ah! Damn it, why are they so stubborn? I swear, this bastard is really asking for it." Controlling his anger with inhuman patience, Ash spoke with a straight face. "You are the one stopping me from doing my work. Just let me do my work. Mister. You ugly-faced bastard, how dare ye say that to me? Soldiers, kill the enemy." Wait, was this anger all because of my face? They are actually biased. They weren't this shitty when Ray came though. Was it because he was stronger than me at that time? I don't think so. Or was it plot armor? And if it was, where is my plot armor? Before things could escalate any further, a firm voice came from the radio-like device the dwarf was holding. "Let him inside, Thorin." Even after hearing the words, Thorin kept his venomous glare fixed on Ash. Finally, with a heavy huff, he stepped to the side and barked, "Fine! Let this ugly bastard inside." Watching the dwarf's back as he turned away, Ash followed him inside the cave at the mountain's base. The entrance was surrounded by an intimidating display of heavy weapons, and the ground was marked with numerous arrays, each one glowing faintly, forming layered defenses over the stone floor. But with each step, his unease was growing, and this time he was not able to ignore it. No matter what, one time or two times could be called a mistake, but not every single time. Something is wrong. Yet, until the very end, he did not see anything suspicious. Everything appeared perfectly normal. As he entered the cave, another dwarf stepped into his path and barked, "Stop right there. Stand here and let me check if ye got something suspicious on ye." Shouting this, the dwarf pointed to a glowing circle etched into the stone beside the cave entrance. Ash complied without argument, stepping into the array. The moment he stood at its center, the runes lit up in a dull blue light, circling around him before slowly fading away after a few seconds. Clear. Ash was allowed to pass. Inside, the cave was simple in its construction, with winding tunnels leading deeper into the mountain. Along the sides, there were smaller passages that likely led to the accommodations for the dwarves. At the center of the chamber stood a massive magic array, and Ash recognized it at a glance. Teleportation array. Ray Dawson, in the original story, had never visited the dwarves for the rune. In the novel, Ray had obtained it from an auction back in the human continent instead. But Ash clearly remembered that the novel had mentioned the item's original owner was a dwarf, and that was why he was here now. There's still a long time before that auction happens. And with my meddling in fate, nothing is certain anymore. What's the chance the item will even get auctioned this time? Ash had no interest in waiting for such a gamble. He wanted to take the item directly. So when the principal suggested he visit the dwarves, Ash was glad. It gave him a way to enter their base openly, like a guest, instead of sneaking in like a thief. But even with things working in his favor, suspicion lingered in his mind. It was rare for events to align this neatly for him, and that in itself was unsettling. Anyway, Ray's reason for visiting the dwarves in the novel had been different. He had come seeking a large amount of rare and precious ores to feed the Godslayer sword. The weapon, slightly damaged from the start, and it needed powerful materials to heal, as it had the ability to restore itself by absorbing various ores, and become even more durable. Though it was never revealed in the novel who had been strong enough to cause even a minor crack in the Godslayer's blade, which was supposed to be the strongest sword under the heaven and earth. Stand in that array. I'll send ye inside the base. And don't ye dare cause any trouble for the Grandmaster, or I'll kill ye where ye stand. Sure, mister. What bullshit is he spouting? Can't he say a better line? He's not creative at all. With that passing remark in his mind, Ash stepped to the center of the array. Not even a second had passed before he felt the familiar sensation of space folding around him. The dwarves' security was tight. The control for the teleportation array was in the hands of someone inside the main base, not the soldiers at the outer checkpoint. The 50 soldiers above could only request its activation, and even then only when one of them gave the proper signal would the person inside activate it. That was why only the most loyal and trusted soldiers were allowed to stand guard at the entrance. When the twisting sensation of space finally faded, Ash's unease spiked to its peak. The feeling was suffocating, as if he were standing inside the jaws of some enormous beast, waiting for them to snap shut and devour him whole. Even Snow was wide awake now, the little creature hissing in agitation, scanning the surroundings for danger. But there was nothing to see. Nothing except for the dwarf walking toward him, who carried himself with a higher air of authority than the one outside. There was nothing visibly dangerous here, yet the ominous feeling clung to him stubbornly. What is this feeling? I feel like I'm being attacked, but there's no one here. I feel like I'm in mortal danger, but there's nothing around me. Is my mind playing tricks on me? No, that's not possible. Even Snow feels something is wrong. It can't be a coincidence. Chapter 219. He's Everywhere 1. Are you here with the item? The dwarf asked, his deep voice carrying the rough edge of someone used to giving orders. His sharp gaze stayed fixed on Ash, who was scanning the surroundings with clear vigilance, his body poised as if ready to fight an invisible enemy lurking nearby. Hearing his question, Ash turned to meet the dwarf's eyes and answered plainly, "Yes, I have it." Ash was not in the mood for formalities right now. His body was already on edge, every sense straining under the weight of the oppressive air. Even if someone hurled insults at him, he doubted he would care enough to respond. Right now, his focus was on staying alert. "I'm one o' the captains o' the security team. I'll be guiding ye to St. Colin. You won't be having a problem with that, I." The dwarf's tone was steady, but there was a faint challenge hidden beneath the politeness, as if daring Ash to disagree. Hearing the words, Ash replied without hesitation, "None. Follow me then." Without another word, Ash fell in step behind the dwarf captain. The sound of their boots against stone echoed in the enclosed space as they moved deeper into the mountain. The tunnels twisted and split into different paths, the walls rough with natural rock, but reinforced in places with solid metal supports. They passed multiple smaller checkpoints, each manned by heavily armed dwarves standing with rigid discipline. With every step, the weight in the air seemed to grow heavier, pressing down on Ash's chest until breathing felt slightly harder. The unease that had been gnawing at him since entering the land of Forge was now almost suffocating. His skin felt unnatural, and beads of sweat began to form on his forehead, sliding slowly down his temple. Noticing his state, the captain glanced over his shoulder with a faint smirk and said, "Ha! Our land's full o' heat and sweat. Best get used to it, lad." Yet, despite his words, Ash noticed there wasn't a single drop of sweat on the dwarf's face. His movements were calm and unhurried, his breathing steady, and the same was true for every other dwarf they passed. Their bodies were unaffected by whatever was making the air feel so stifling to him. "Mama, I know." Even Snow, who was tucked deep within Ash's clothes, was sweating lightly. But Ash knew that this wasn't caused by heat. The tunnels weren't sweltering. The sensation clinging to them was something else entirely. A heavy, invisible tension that felt like it was pressing against his very being. Should I run away? The thought flickered in his mind for a brief moment. If he hadn't obtained the Rune of Death, Ash knew he might have already turned around and fled from this suffocating atmosphere. But with that protection, he kept moving forward, even as his instincts screamed that something was deeply wrong. When he passed a few more checkpoints, a sudden burst of blinding light assaulted his eyes. He instinctively narrowed them, but as they slowly adjusted, a vast city of dwarves came into view. Damnation, that was the only word Ash could use to define it. The city was attractive, to say the least. He had imagined seeing high-end technology, towering metallic structures, and futuristic designs. But instead, it felt as if the dwarves were still living in the past. Houses made of sturdy mud and thick timber stood beneath a massive dome-like ceiling, its surface covered entirely with interlinked runes that glowed faintly. The magic lines ran across the dome like veins, connecting into a complex web that seemed to pulse with life. The houses and larger buildings followed a traditional style, with chimneys puffing out steam or smoke. Above each chimney, rune arrays pulled the emissions upward and dispersed them. The mix of raw craftsmanship and functional magic created a scene unlike anything Ash had seen before. All in all, the scenery was mesmerizing, and Ash found himself a little stunned, especially when he had expected something entirely different. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" The dwarf captain's voice broke the moment, his chest puffing with visible pride, as though he himself had built every brick and carved every rune. "Yeah, it is," Ash admitted, his tone soft but genuine. Though his attention was briefly captured by the view, the discomfort in his chest lingered. Each breath felt heavier, almost as if the very air resisted him, like it didn't want him here. Shaking off the unease gnawing at his mind, Ash urged the dwarf to hurry. The captain gave a small nod, and they boarded a flying vehicle. Its metallic frame was sturdy, its movement almost silent as it glided smoothly above the streets, weaving through the controlled air currents inside the dome. They approached one of the larger, stone-faced buildings. When they arrived and stepped inside, the captain walked up to a counter where another dwarf stood. "Give this lad a room for one day," the captain instructed. The receptionist smiled, nodded, and quickly handed over a small brass key to the captain, who passed it on to Ash. Ash took the key slowly, his brow furrowing. His eyes narrowed toward the captain with a silent accusation. "Traitor. You said we were going to meet St. Colin," Ash said aloud, his voice calm but edged with disappointment. "Aye, and we will," the captain replied without flinching. "But not today. This here's only one o' the cities in the continent, Ironhall City. St. Colin resides in the central city, where the king himself is. You'll have to wait at least a day while I handle the procedures for the travel." He gave a short shrug, almost casually, and added, "That was why Thorin told ye to hand over the item, so you wouldn't have to go through all this. But ye refused." Ash's jaw tightened, but he forced his voice to remain steady. "Fine. I'll wait for a day." He took the key and walked toward the room number engraved on its tag. Curses. I can't leave. I still have to get the rune, commission the items for Alicia and myself, and I need to meet St. Colin in person. When he reached the room, he was at least relieved to see the bed was large enough for him. That had been one of his small but nagging concerns, that dwarven-sized furniture would leave him sleeping cramped and uncomfortable. "Is the room to your liking?" the dwarf captain asked from the doorway. Ash gave a small nod. "Ah, forgive me," the captain said, his tone softening slightly. "I didn't even ask for your name. It's Ash Byrne. Nice. Fine name indeed. Sounds like it's tied to fire. Were your parents blacksmiths?" The captain's eyes seemed to glimmer with curiosity, a faint spark of interest in his otherwise steady gaze.
No.
Ash's flat, straightforward reply doused that spark instantly. "All right then," the captain said after a pause. "Rest well. We'll leave as soon as the procedures are done." With that, he turned and stepped out, the heavy door closing with a dull thud. Ash stood still for a moment, then exhaled quietly. Snow checked the room. The little creature stirred beneath his clothes and began scanning with its X-ray vision, sweeping over every corner and crevice. Mama! Only after confirming there were no hidden listening devices or surveillance runes did Ash finally allow himself to relax. Then he entered his soul space. Snow followed right after him, and with that, the suffocating unease in his chest faded away completely. What the hell was that creepy experience? Ash muttered to himself. He didn't know the cause, but he was certain. Something was wrong in the city, maybe even in the entire continent. Is it the demons again? I didn't sense any nearby, but they could be far from my range. I'll need to look around the city to be sure. Although he had promised himself he wouldn't get involved in any more of that saving others nonsense, here he was. And deep down, he knew the truth. Even if he tried to ignore it, something bad would happen, because with his damned fate, things always did. So he had to be ready. After reading through 1 or 2 books in his soul space, Ash returned to his bed and drifted off to sleep. Surprisingly, the night passed without incident, but the unease remained. It was like a cold thread wrapped around his spine, refusing to let go. Washing his face and eating a quick breakfast from the supplies in his space ring, Ash left the inn. The moment he stepped outside, the sharp, rhythmic sound of metal striking metal echoed across the streets. He took a deep breath, trying to clear his mind, and wandered until he stopped in front of a solid-looking building with a polished wooden sign. Without hesitation, he stepped inside.
Ah, hello.
I'm here to commission some items to be made, Ash said to the female dwarf behind the counter, who was arranging goods on display. Sorry, customer, we're not taking any requests right now, she replied without looking up. I see. Thank you for your time, then. I'll just ask another smith. Ash turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. Lad, no one's going to take your request. He looked back at her, narrowing his eyes slightly. Why? Is it because I'm an outsider? The dwarf shook her head, letting out a small sigh. No. It's 'cause there's no proper blacksmith in this city. The ones here are all novices and apprentices at best. And I doubt ye'd want someone like that workin' on your items. Why? Where are the others, the masters and grandmasters? They're all in the central city, she replied, leaning her weight on the counter now, lowering her voice slightly. That's the most I know. If you want quality work, you'll have to go there. But even then, I doubt any o' them will take your commission. With a shooing gesture, she waved him toward the door. Stepping outside again, Ash's thoughts spun. The principal sent an item to the dwarves. All the true blacksmiths are in the central city. Are they working on some massive project? And why don't I know about it? Could they be building some kind of massive war engine or a ship to escape when the world ends? No, unlikely. Theories swirled through his head, each wilder than the last, but none provided a clear answer. Ah, damn it. Questions and more questions. Cursing under his breath, Ash decided to sweep the entire city. Street by street, alley by alley, he searched for the faintest trace of demonic energy. Hours passed, but he found nothing. There's no demon presence. Could it be they haven't done anything to the dwarves yet? No, that doesn't explain why my unease hasn't gone away. As he turned a corner, he noticed a young dwarf struggling to lift a massive block of metal with the help of a mana-powered machine. The machine jolted, and the heavy slab slipped free, falling toward an older dwarf standing directly beneath it. Ash instantly teleported forward to help, but the 1-second delay before his skill activated proved costly. The metal came crashing down before he could reach them. Bomb! Dust and shards of stone exploded into the air. Appearing beside the fallen slab, Ash dug his boots into the ground, muscles locking as he heaved the crushing weight to the side, revealing the old dwarf's battered body beneath. Are you okay? Ash asked, kneeling close, scanning for fatal injuries.
I'm sorry.
I'll get a doctor. Don't die, old man. Just wait for me. The young dwarf's voice was high with panic as he bolted down the street, vanishing around the corner. Ash shook his head. No time for that. Placing his palm on the elder's chest, he poured life mana into him. Life mana infusion. Warm, vibrant energy surged through the dwarf's body, knitting tissue, easing pain. But instead of gratitude, the old man's eyes flew wide with raw terror. His skin turned pale as if all color had been drained from it. His gaze fixed on Ash as though staring into an abyss. Run! Run away! He rasped, voice shaking. We're all going to die. We can't escape. He's everywhere. Before Ash could ask who he was talking about, the old dwarf's head burst apart with a wet, sickening pop, spraying blood across Ash's face, clothes, and hair. The metallic tang of it hit his tongue before he could even move. He froze, heart pounding in his ears, his mind caught between shock and disbelief. What the hell? Chapter 220. He's everywhere, too. One moment Ash was trying to heal the old dwarf, and in the very next moment, the old dwarf head exploded, muttering some strange, incoherent words that sounded like gibberish. What the hell? Ash froze, his mind struggling to register what had just happened. The sticky sensation of blood clinging to his skin, mixed with fragments of brain matter, was sickening enough to make his stomach churn. But more than the disgust, there was something else that gripped him. Was that demonic energy? No, felt different, darker, far more sinister. He had sensed nothing before placing his hands on the old man to heal him. Yet the instant life slipped away from the dwarf's body, even if only for the briefest moment. He felt it. It wasn't just a vague impression, he was certain. Whatever that energy was, whether demonic or something worse, it was the cause of the old dwarf's death. But the question of who or what was behind it didn't matter right now. What mattered was the sudden chill crawling up his spine. His instincts screamed warnings at him, sharp and unrelenting, as if every fiber of his being knew something was terribly wrong. Slowly, Ash lifted his gaze, scanning the surroundings to understand why the air felt so suffocating. And then it became clear. The usual noise of clanging metal, shuffling feet, and low chatter was gone. The street was drowning in silence. Every dwarf who had been walking, working, eating, or talking just moments ago had stopped mid-action. Now, they all stood frozen, their cold, expressionless eyes fixed on him. They didn't move. They didn't blink. They simply stared, their gaze almost lifeless yet heavy enough to send a chill deep into his bones. What a wretched situation. Just moments before stepping into this place, Ash had been thinking about how united the dwarves seemed, how they all worked together as one. Now, here he stood, drenched in the blood of one of their own. Even though he hadn't killed the old dwarf, would any of them believe that? Damn, damn, damn. He cursed inwardly, yet his mind remained unervingly calm. His thoughts worked quickly, trying to piece together what had just happened. Why the dwarf had suddenly died, and if there truly was a demon here, why couldn't he sense it? Before his thoughts could spiral any further, the young dwarf from earlier returned, bringing several others with him. Among them were armored soldiers, clearly called to help lift the massive metal slab. But when the boy's eyes fell upon Ash, his body and clothes soaked in blood, and at the dead old man without head, his face went pale and his small frame began to tremble. The others followed his gaze, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock and then to cold hostility. Murder! The young dwarf's shout pierced through the air, and in an instant, the soldiers who had come to move the slab abandoned their task, surrounding Ash from all sides and pointing various weapons at him. Don't move! Contact the order. There's been a murder in the streets. Detain him. Ash stood there, watching everything unfold with hollow eyes, his thoughts racing in silence. What should he do now? Escape? That was something he could do without the slightest difficulty. There was no doubt about it. But there was far more at stake than just his own freedom. He had come here under the identity of Ash Byrne, not as the unknown. If things spiraled out of control, it could easily escalate into open hostility between the dwarves and humans. And that was far from ideal, especially with the looming war against the demons, where humans might very well find themselves in desperate need of the dwarves' support. When was I ever the one to be concerned about humans? He couldn't understand why that thought even mattered to him now, yet for some reason it did. Yeah, it will affect Alicia as well. I can't let that happen. At least, that was what he told himself as he allowed the dwarves to clamp mana-sealing cuffs around his wrists and lead him away. Ash didn't resist. He didn't say anything else. Even with Omni-Thought active and his senses spread far and wide, he could not detect even the faintest trace of demonic energy anywhere nearby. But as they walked through the streets, past one corner and then another, he began to notice something strange. Every time they passed, dwarves stopped whatever they were doing. If they had been talking, their words died mid-sentence. If they had been working, their hands froze. Every single one turned their head to watch Ash, their cold, unblinking eyes fixed on him until he was out of sight. Being surrounded by at least 20 dwarves and stared at as though he were some exotic creature on display was far from pleasant. The oppressive silence only made it worse. No one spoke. No one muttered. The only sound that followed him was the steady echo of boots striking stone. Curse it, this is getting too far from the genre of the novel I read. Grumbling inwardly, Ash shifted uncomfortably as they led him deeper into the city, toward what could only be a prison. The strange part was that they were already far underground, yet they were still descending. They entered a corridor swallowed by darkness, with only dim, spaced-out lamps casting just enough light to walk by. Ash stepped carefully, one stair at a time, but the unease gnawing at him refused to fade. The danger he felt was still there, lurking at the edge of his senses. Can you contact the Captain Dwarf? I don't know his name, but I'm sure he can vouch for me. I was only here to deliver an item. Why would I kill someone? I'm telling you, I'm being framed right now. But the soldier's eyes were cold, their expressions slightly off, and not a single one of them responded. They simply continued leading him further down. They're not listening to me at all. Damn it. From the way things were going, Ash had the sinking feeling that he was destined to be thrown into prison in every continent he set foot on. The Elven continent was the only exception so far. Everywhere else, whether in the Dragon continent or the Dwarven one, he had somehow ended up behind bars. Even in the human continent, he was branded as a criminal. If the Whisperer had not intervened back then, Ash was certain he would still be considered a criminal there to this day. I knew things were going too smoothly. Was this the source of my unease all along? He didn't know for sure. All he knew was that he was in trouble. After what felt like descending at least 5 or 6 floors, Ash was finally led to a small prison block. There were a large number of prisoners locked here, the shadows hiding their exact appearance. But he could sense they were all alive, although in what condition no one could be certain. He was taken to the very last prison cell and locked inside, the iron door closing with a metallic clang that echoed faintly in the dark. The 2 guards who had transported him here turned around and left, their boots striking the stone floor, each step ringing out in the silence until even the faint echoes faded away. After 5 minutes had passed, Ash finally moved. He had no plans to sit here and rot. The only reason he had allowed himself to be caught so easily was because what he wanted to do could not be done outside. He already had an inkling of what was happening. Snow. The moment he called, a small white serpent emerged from his soul space. Her smooth scales shimmered faintly even in the dim light as she wrapped herself around his arm. Snow then pressed her snout against the cuffs around his wrists, and in an instant, they vanished without a sound. Snow was capable of storing objects directly into his soul vault as long as Ash permitted it. Ash himself could not store the cuffs because even for that, a minuscule amount of mana was required. Mana that was inaccessible to him while bound by the sealing restraints. Rubbing his wrists to get rid of the stiffness, Ash teleported out of the prison cell and into the one next to him. Inside was another dwarf, his body thin from malnourishment, his eyes hollow and lifeless. Ash normally would not have gone out of his way to remove the handcuffs of a criminal, especially one whose strength was unknown. But looking at the dwarf's frail and malnourished state, He doubted the man had the strength to even stand, let alone attack him. After removing the cuffs, which were capable of completely blocking Ash's mana, he placed his hands firmly on the dwarf's chest. Life mana infusion. He repeated the same process he had used with the old dwarf. It was not something he could experiment with on innocent people outside. This kind of test could only be done on criminals. And really, what better place to find criminals than inside a prison? Soon, the emptiness in the dwarf's eyes faded, replaced by a faint trace of life. But almost immediately, his face twisted in fear, his pale features trembling as he stared at Ash as if he were looking at a ghost. Aldi. We are all going to die. Those were his last words before his head burst open, just like the old dwarf's, coating Ash in another spray of blood and brain matter. This time, however, there was no disgust on his face, only a serious expression. I'm sure now, they are under some sort of illusion or mind control. That was the conclusion he reached after going through the different possibilities in his mind. The reason he could not sense anyone or any demon was because there was none, at least not physically present in the city. The enemy might be controlling a selected few with some kind of charm, illusion, or direct mental domination. When Ash infused life mana into them, before the connection between the demon and the host could be completely severed, the controller was killing the host to prevent any information from leaking. But even then, many questions remained unanswered. How many of them were under control? How was the demon controlling them? Was it only a selected few or everyone? If it was the former, then what was the criteria for selection? And if it was the latter, then it was nothing short of nightmarish. Was every blacksmith in the central continent under mind control as well? Or was it only the high-ranking individuals? Too many questions. Nothing is confirmed yet. And then another troubling thought came to him. Why were the criminals and the old dwarf under the control of this mind demon? Were they special in some way? Or was his suspicion that everyone was under control actually true? No, that would be too horrifying. I doubt I could even kill something that could control so many beings. And this is only one city. There might be many more like this, or there might not be. But still, I don't think it's possible to control so many creatures at once. It must have selected only a few, either randomly or for a specific purpose, and I was just unlucky enough to meet two of them back to back. Yes, that must be it. Before he could think further, hurried footsteps echoed toward him. Ash immediately left the prison cell, returned to his own, and placed the cuffs back on his wrists. What was that sound? The soldier called out loudly, but no one responded. Then he stepped in front of Ash's cell and asked, "Did you make the noise?" No, I swear it wasn't intentional. I just tripped while trying to stand, you see. Hope you don't mind." The dwarf soldier stared at him coldly for a few seconds before turning away and muttering, "Hump! Whatever. You will die soon anyway." As the soldier's footsteps faded, Ash's expression became utterly cold.